Very good. Well, I think it's time to start. So we do have a workshop this evening that we had scheduled to begin at 5 p.m. So this is a workshop to review current towing ordinances and procedures, discuss proposed changes to the processing of mobile food unit applications, and to discuss a proposed election campaign ordinance. So I know there's a little bit of confusion about, I think for the first one, if I was going to discuss any parking issues, that's not tonight. That is scheduled for September 15th, and that'll be a full hour just for that, on that, and we look forward to that. We've had some preliminary discussions on that. We'll have a good presentation that night, but that is not tonight. It is just on the towing ordinances. So we'll start there, and I'm guessing I saw Sylvia. So are you going to be the one talking about the towing ordinance? Oh, or is it Taylor? Okay, very good. Yep, jump on in. No, let's start wherever you want.
Okay,
so
great. Figure I'd start with maybe the quicker one first. So on the screen, you're going to see the application for the current mobile food unit process that we use. And we're hoping by next summer we have a more streamlined process of how we do it and kind of direction from the council on what you'd like to see and how we want to change things. I know from speaking with staff, the application can be a little bit cumbersome and especially for applicants, it can be maybe a little bit more complicated than it may need to be. So I want to show you a couple highlights and see kind of your feedback on how we can make some changes here. So the top half should be pretty standard. If you want to scroll a little bit past that, that second page is going to be a list of things that are required for the food unit application. One of the things that stands out is we have an FBI background check that's required on that. Costs, I think, want to say close to $50 for each applicant to do the fingerprinting process. All of that, it takes a significant amount of time, and it's just, again, a lot of paperwork to kind of work through. And so that's kind of one of the main things that we wanted your direction on, if we could immediately remove that from the application. And then a couple other things, like I said, that we'd like to see maybe by next summer is it requires things that are obviously necessary. So you have a Southwest District Health permit, you have proof of insurance, registration, all of those things. We also have a standard fire inspection report that is pretty detailed and definitely covers everything it needs to. A couple other things that may be a little bit more difficult are the vicinity maps. The site plans are pretty detailed, and we also are restricted to just limit to, if you want to scroll down to that below it. Yep. So right there, the maximum is 4 sites allowed. And if you really think about, so Boise's a really good example of the mobile food units. Sometimes those food trucks, they have 2 or 3 different stops they make on a daily basis. And so I think the limit of 4 may be a little bit restrictive. So I'm hoping to kind of open that up a little bit and make it more accessible for the applicants to be able to move around the city and set a set schedule without just being limited by 4. So those are kind of the highlights. Again, if you guys have any immediate questions, I'd like to hear them.
thank you so much. Any questions, Councilor McGee?
Just real quick, Mr. Mayor, do we have any history, this might be a question for Debbie too. Do we have any history on why originally this was requiring an FBI check? It seems, I knew Debbie would know.
Actually, it started with door-to-door sales with the FBI background check, and that seems to be a really prudent step to protect our citizens. But the planning and zoning director at the time thought that maybe there was a carryover of that with people in the mobile food trucks serving the public, and thought that maybe that might be precautionary. But the contact is different. It's not like a door-to-door sale when sometimes they're invited into the home or making a contract with that person, wanting to know a little bit more of the background. This is typical. And prior to probably, this has been in force maybe 5 or 6 years, I think it was, if you remember right. And prior to that, there was not that requirement. It really started with just a door-to-door sale. Am I right in that, Chris? You're kind of in on that.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
And it was my understanding that we had backed off a little bit from some of the things we were doing earlier, but
that one stayed.
Yeah, and I I see we have plenty of law enforcement folks in here, including sitting here, and I don't see anyone saying, hey, we gotta keep this FBI background check for food trucks. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. Thanks, Debbie.
Mr. Mayor, I had a question.
Councilor
You Lieutenant, Chief still, do we have any concerns about all the folks illegally coming over the border and coming north relative to FBI checks? Okay, all right.
Well, they do have to pull a retail from the state as well, so there's requirements there as far as being able to have your sufficient ID with that, because they have to register with the state, as a business most of the time, and then for sure for their tax, ID number, they have to have that, so I think we're probably pretty safe with that. Yeah.
Council Williams?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Just really briefly, I'm glad we're looking at it. Thank you for doing this, because I was just recently speaking with someone who was wanting to apply to get a permit here and said it was much more cumbersome than even other surrounding cities. And so I'm sure you'll look at what maybe Nampa or Middleton or some of these other cities are doing so we can compare notes while we're in the process.
Absolutely. Actually, I've been speaking with the city attorneys over in Boise. I really like the model that they use. They do food truck rallies. I remember I worked downtown by St. Luke's, and the cafeteria was out of commission. They were remodeling it for a couple months, and they just would have food trucks all around in a parking lot, and it was actually a really great event that they did almost every day, and everyone loved it. So that's kind of the model that I'm hoping to try to maybe not recreate in Caldwell, but give applicants the opportunity to be a little bit more flexible with how they want to run their business. So,
Excellent, thank
yep.
you.
So I want to move now to the towing conversation. There's a couple different kind of situations that I want to present to you all and see where you land on them. So the first one is our train depot parking. I want to pull up two photos that I'd like you to look at. They're the current signs that are posted at the location now. Here's some of the depot signs. So one of the conversations we've had is that there's been significant amounts of overnight parking there at that location. We're trying to obviously limit that, and these are the signs that are posted currently. So we have unauthorized vehicles, obviously just a standard towing sign, but what can be a bit misconstrued potentially is there's a free parking sign that says very clearly no overnight parking, but then also says unauthorized vehicles will be towed. So the conversation is there any way to clarify the sign, or there is a way to clarify the signs, I'm sure. Do you feel that putting a time stamp of when overnight parking is unauthorized would be appropriate? And the next question is maybe more for the officers in the back here. What would make them feel comfortable to be able to tow immediately from that location? Right now, as the ordinance stands, it is, I think it's 0907, 09, so pull up both of those ordinances for me, the city code. So we have, this is the timestamp that that the city code currently uses for overnight parking. So it's a time longer than 30 minutes between 2 and 5 a.m. So certainly the sign can read to reflect that language in the city code. And then the next city code, if you could pull up 19 on that. The very last sentence of this city code is what we're using as the authority for officers to be able to immediately tow from that lot. Bottom line says, improperly parked vehicle may also be towed upon order of the police department. And so we can certainly clarify that ordinance to give officers more authority to be able to tow immediately from that location, if we feel that that's necessary, or change the signage. I know this has been a conversation I've had with a couple different people, so if anyone has any immediate questions or comments on that, I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, Councilor Brody?
Some other law enforcement in the room will too, but I think one of the issues we have is with the time on this already. I could just see our officers are already too busy to come mark a tire, come back in 30 minutes to see if it's moved or changed. So my recommendation would be it just be a time set. So after this time, you can't, or between these two times, it can't be there. And clearly the chief can chime in as well, but I just think that marking and coming back and marking for an officer that's on regular duty is a little cumbersome.
So eliminating the 30-minute essentially altogether would be what you're recommending,
That would be my idea, is just between this time and this time, you can't park there.
okay?
And I think that, this may even want to be with our meeting we're gonna have on September 15th. We're gonna talk a lot about some pretty significant changes, I think, that are being proposed for downtown for parking, of metering and things like that, and new positions that we may need to create to enforce that. So, that could really change all of this depending on what's determined and decided, by the council in regards to downtown parking, garage, things like that.
I have a whole bunch
Yeah.
of comments. I've bugged everybody about this, 'cause, the signs were my first thing that kind of pushed me over a little bit, 'cause we want people to come down and park and do the things downtown, and that unauthorized vehicles will be towed makes people question whether, well, am I authorized to park there or not? I'll let Lieutenant Wright and the chief maybe address this more, but I would lean towards, we have parking tickets for a number of things. I would lean towards, for the first time or two, just throwing a parking ticket on there rather than towing immediately. And I can understand the officer's hesitancy to just go out and tow a vehicle that's sitting there. And if someone builds up parking tickets, then by all means, the next step would be appropriate. But for instance, the far east end of the railroad parking gets a lot of cars that are parked down there. I think people try to store them down there and things. And I would like to see us take that $75 parking ticket approach first, and then move to towing if that doesn't resolve the issue.
And just one more comment, just make sure that we're looking at Idaho code. I imagine some of that sign verbiage is out of the code, which probably isn't very well written either, because it's state code written for city enforcement mostly. But I concur that you don't always have to tow it. You can certainly ticket it first and forward from there. But we just need to make sure if we're gonna change the sign verbiage that it fits with the code. I'm sure that's why the one about the towing gives you where it's going and the phone number. I think those, I haven't looked at that code in a while, but I think the Idaho code requires some specific language.
It does. Councilman Allgood, if I could further question you on that suggestion. If we were to alter the signs, consider removing that 30-minute window as well, could we leave that up to the discretion of the officers to either issue a citation or tow if it's a car that they, maybe recognize? From my perspective, that city code up there that we have, 19, Rob, if you could re-pull that up. I think it adequately gives officers the option to revert to towing if they feel that it's appropriate.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
There's gonna be circumstances where towing might be more appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I want to make sure I'm covering every topic from the guys in the vest back there, so if I can get a nod, okay.
Mr. Mayor, what about the times? Are they accurate?
Right,
Is
exactly.
satisfactory, or do they need to be tightened up, or? I think the times are good. Okay. Okay.
Right. All of our parks close at 11, but 11 may be too early for down there.
There's some complaints coming out of there from business owners saying that the plaza technically closes at 11, but some businesses stay open past 11. So is it illegal for people to loiter around if businesses are still open, or then it puts it back on the police? So we need to all be on the same page and be able to enforce or encourage people to stay out later.
If I can I clarify, do you all feel that city code, upon order of the police department, is sufficient authority to act and do immediate towing in that way? Sylvia? So if. Okay. And they would feel based on this language that immediate tow could be an option. Is that fair to say? Okay, okay. Okay, so next towing, situation that I wanted to bring up, let's do, if you wanna bring the accessible parking spaces up. So, a couple conversations have been, made about access aisles. So access aisles are gonna be the cross-hatched, spaces or space next to a handicapped accessible parking spot. They're super important for people if they have accessible vehicles that will accommodate a wheelchair, something of that nature. They need to be able to have space to be able to open their doors all the way and be able to use those sort of things. If you want to scroll down a little bit farther for me. Those are going to be, so there's going to be some check marks for what access aisles must be. I've had them highlighted there with a photo. There were some questions about whether or not the spaces, the access aisles need to be marked as no parking, or if there needs to be a sign next to them. And the answer to that is a no parking zone marked in the way that the photo depicts is how our city's access aisles are marked. They're sufficient for a no parking designation, and ticketing is appropriate in those spots. So we have a couple photos in which that's been happening, and I would also like to clarify that that's also a traffic problem, and I would think immediate towing is appropriate for that as well if officers feel that that's necessary. So that was kind of just maybe not so much of a feedback, just kind of let you guys know that's a situation that we've been having, and I dug a little deeper into it, and I feel confident that what we have in the city here is definitely up to code.
Yes, Councilor Doty?
I would just add again, though, if it is going to be an immediate tow, or we're gonna classify it that way, that signage required by Idaho code needs to be put in front of that.
Correct. So
That's gonna happen to their vehicle.
So I have done a little bit of research into that, and I'll continue to do more research before we kind of finish this conversation in the next couple weeks while we build out our towing ordinances. But because it's marked in the way that it is, we're good with that. So yes, that's what I've been researching as well, and I feel it's very much up to exactly what ADA requires and federal code on that. Anything to add on that, Sylvia, at all? Okay. Okay. Sure, and I certainly think that that's appropriate. Again, with that same code that we just addressed, I want to be clear that officers have the authority to tow for illegally parked vehicles if they feel like that's appropriate. May not be, but we'll leave that up to their discretion. So the last portion of towing conversations is going to be trucks and trailer parking. So if you'll pull up the ordinance that I have. And scroll down a little bit. So I'll show you so the conversation, the direction I'd like to have from the council here on this issue is currently as it stands, a truck, which is essentially what you're envisioning, a semi-truck, is not to be parked in any residential streets or alleys. So what I'm hoping to clarify with this ordinance is to clarify any residential districts, so that would be all 5 of them. Also, we are adding in number 2 there that they are not to be parked within a hospital district. And then another conversation that I'd like to have is potentially adding commercial and industrial districts as well. There's been a few instances, seems like it's been a reoccurring kind of complaint, is that it is very difficult to exit businesses within industrial and commercial districts when there's semi-trucks parked on the side of the road. Very difficult to see, creates low visibility for all moving traffic, and it's definitely something that Sylvia could speak to, gets quite a few complaints. So I guess direction from the council on adding commercial and industrial zones districts into this ordinance forbidding truck parking.
And my question would be even why is it only limited to residential? Because I think collectors and arterials can actually get very bogged down as well with semi trucks parked on there, and it's unsightly. And I know I've seen several where they take advantage of that, so you'll see multiple semi trucks parked on a collector roadway, and it just starts to look like a basically a semi parking lot going down there. So it can actually, especially when it's thinking of some by where I live, where collector roadways often border residential subdivisions. And so you start to see numerous semi trucks parked literally right outside a residential subdivision. It's not inside it in the local street, but still has, I think, a negative effect for that neighborhood.
Certainly, we can add that to the ordinance as well. We can make sure we encompass. I just wanted to know, maybe restrictive is the wrong term to use, but how restrictive we wanted to be in this ordinance, if we want to include really all of those things. And if that's the direction you guys wish to see that, we can certainly make that happen.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, and I think a great example is if you go out to Sky Ranch, and that one that's not quite developed yet. I mean, literally, it is a parking lot for semi trucks. There's dozens of them parked out there just for days on that. So yeah, sorry, Councilman Ogden.
I'm struggling with the commercial industrial parking part of it, because in many occasions they're there, they get there early and they're waiting for whatever business to open or whatever. And so they're could be there overnight, but I'm concerned because if we make an ordinance where they can't park in all these places, when these commercial vehicles come to town, where is the appropriate place for them to park?
So in that ordinance, we do have where they can be there for the temporary purpose of loading or unloading. I would venture to say officers are not going to be ticketing or having any sort of issue with semi-trucks parked that are very clearly doing business immediately. I think we're more concerned about, I guess, what comes to mind is the residential aspect of it, right? When you come home for the end of a trip or whatever, and you park your truck outside your home. That's what comes to mind immediately.
And that's been the typical problem in the past.
Commercial and industrial, I think maybe Sylvia would be the better one if you have any examples of when that's been happening.
Gotcha.
And we do address in this ordinance trailers as well, so being disconnected from the cab and all of that. So if the direction that I'm hearing is that we'd want to add commercial, industrial, and the things that Mayor Wagner mentioned as well, we can certainly go in that direction.
Yeah, and I like that, no trailer shall be disconnected. I like that.
Okay.
That wording.
Yeah, I'm looking at Google Streets right now on Capitol Street out in Sky Ranch, and yeah, there's 1, 2, 3 just disconnected, just literally sitting there from the street. That there's no cab, they're just literally dumped there as a storage ground. So basically, they're using the public streets as free parking, free storage areas for their vehicles. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilman.
What about, we have a lot of folks that have trailers now. They come home late at night from a weekend trip, they park their truck and trailer outside a residential area until they get a chance to clean up maybe the next evening or something when they get home from work. How does that work? What do we do with that?
I think HOAs help cover some of that, but I don't know what the city.
What about the? Okay. Thank you.
I know I'm out of time on that. That's all we had for towing. If I may take 30 seconds, I have a quick little tidbit to add on elections, and then we should be done here. If you'll open both of those exhibits in that folder.
When does your 30 seconds start? Are we gonna time
Right,
it?
right when it comes up on the board, you gotta give me a fair shot. Okay,
You're
the
good.
next
You're
one,
good.
too. So one of the questions that came up recently was, we have a Idaho State Code, Section 18-2318, so I have the relevant sections highlighted there. Basically saying that any sort of electioneering on the day of election within 100 feet of a polling place is forbidden. So one of the questions was where that 100 feet starts. So I have made a handy dandy map, if you want to pull that up, and I have spent all afternoon figuring out how to measure 100 feet from the entrance of the door, and I'd love to show it to you. So give me an extra 5 seconds to appreciate the work on this. So that's the entrance of, for example, we have, why can I not remember what it's called, next to the Caldwell Event Center there.
O'Connor
Fieldhouse.
How
Sorry,
can you not know
you
that?
know, I was a Nampa Christian gal. I wasn't
That's where I
Caldwell.
played
You can't
basketball
be
in
mad
high
at me.
school.
So that's the front entrance there. We have a radius of 100 feet, and although that 100 feet does not include all of the parking lot, that's how the law is written. It's 100 feet from the door. So if there's going to be cars parked in the parking lot outside of that 100-foot radius, they're entitled to be there. Obviously, they need to be parked legally, so they cannot be parked on the road illegally with signs. They can't be left untended, parked illegally. They've got to be parked correctly and properly. But if they're outside that 100-foot radius, they can be there. Any questions on that?
I maybe have one, and this came up just here where the last primary election we had some complaints about some people that were out there, and in that regards. So the door though, because there's multiple doors along there, so how do you determine, because like I said, I know there's a door further that way that would probably touch 22nd Avenue, there's a door down here that would then touch there.
You're just trying to see how good my measuring skills are for this, aren't you? I can tell.
So I guess maybe, is it any door or?
It's not any door, it's the main entrance. And so
Okay.
I'm not familiar with that specific polling place
Mhm.
if there's multiple entrances. I believe it's just that front one. Debbie is shaking her head. Do you have an idea on that?
They have used side door
Okay.
sometimes when there's a double booking there,
Okay.
but generally it's the front door.
Okay. So, I would say front door, wherever they are registering, that's where the entrance is, and that's where that 100-foot starts.
Okay.
Okay? All right, that's all I had. Thanks for your time.
You betcha. Any questions from any council members on any of that? Okay, I think that's all the special presentations we had. Is that correct, Ms. Geyer? Okay, very good. So, see, you actually had 27 more minutes, so you got through it just fine. Okay, well, we appreciate that. Obviously, there's no decision-making. This is just a workshop to inform the city council. There may be ordinances coming forward in the future, but if there are, those would obviously be properly noticed and discussed and testimony taken at that time. So with that, we'll end this workshop at this time and be back here at 6 p.m. for our regular city council meeting agenda. From Porter, and I hear tonight is a special night for you and your wife, your 44-year anniversary. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, and what in the world am I doing here?
You're lucky you got 44 years if you're bringing your wife to city council on your anniversary, so she must be a very special
Man walking
woman.
right here, man.
That's exactly right. So congratulations, by the way, on that. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And we do appreciate you being here. So if you don't mind giving us an invocation, if everybody stand for that and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Father God, we thank you for this beautiful day, and it's a sure special one for Sharon and myself. We thank you for your goodness. First of all, to us as a couple. I mean, it was your call that led us here, and this has become our home. It's a place we treasure, a place that we've chosen to invest in with our lives and our abilities. Father, for the people that govern us so well, we pray that you would give them strength and endurance. Father, give them wisdom and clarity as these issues come before them. For those in the audience, Father, give them a sense of understanding how the process works, why it's necessary. And Father, we are just so pleased to live here where we see progress being made every single day. We thank you for the beauty of this place, for the spirit of this place. Father, thank you for everything that you've done and continue to do. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, and thank you again for being here, and congratulations. And it's people like the Porters. They really make Caldwell such a special place. So we appreciate them and all that they do for our wonderful community, the service that they give. As you know, Mr. Porter is the chairman of our Urban Renewal Commission as well. Has done that for many years, and so they just give so much of their effort and work to the city, and it's just so appreciated. So thank you for all you do, and congratulations. And so hopefully you have something a little more fun planned after this meeting, and we'll try not to drag it out too long so you can get out here at a decent time to still enjoy the night. So, but again, thank you for being here. Madam Clerk, if you'd please call the roll.
Allgood?
Here.
Williams?
Here.
Doty?
Here.
Stodic?
Here.
McGee?
Very good. So we do, Councilor Register is not able to be with us tonight, but other than that, we do have all councilors present and accounted for. With that, are there any conflict of interest declarations from any members of the council? Let the record reflect that there are none. Special presentations, we do have one special presentation, which is an annual update report from the Caldwell Senior Center. So if you'd please come forward, if you don't mind stating your name for the record, and then the time is yours for your report.
Okay. My name is Donna Crockett, and I'm chairman on the Senior Center Board of Directors. Okay?
Very good. Time is yours.
All right. And I'm just going to start out with kind of briefly tell you what we do there. We do a lot of things for the community, not only the community, but the senior community as well. We have lunch 5 days a week, very good lunches, I might add. We had chicken Alfredo the other day, and somebody told the cooks that if they're not careful, we're going to put Olive Garden out of business. So that's okay. We had, I think it was yesterday, we had 80-some people. Since the first of the year, we have served 7,656 meals. So that's pretty good, and our numbers are still growing, so that's great. And quite often, you know, we try and serve well-rounded, healthy meals, and that's the only meal of that sort that most of those people get in a day. You know, besides the meal, they all also come down for meet with friends, make new friends, social interaction, and most of them would be my guess that that's the only human touch that they have in a day. So we serve a good purpose. 2 times a week, 2 different exercise groups. We also have on Wednesday morning, we have an art group that meets there. They come and do whatever they want, you know, oil painting, whatever. On Wednesday morning, we have a group of ladies, men could do it too, but it's a knit and crochet group. They make shawls and blankets for hospice or whoever needs it, and all the yarn is donated. On Monday at 1 o'clock, we have line dancing. Pretty good group for that. On Tuesday, we have pinochle, and then in the evening, we have bingo. And it's getting to be, what was it, Tuesday before last, we had 80 people there, but it is a money raiser. It's a nonprofit bingo, and we raised money. We turn our profits back over to the center. As it gets closer to winning $500, we get more people. But then, when somebody wins that, the numbers of attendance drop a little bit. But we're getting ready this Tuesday night to have a hot dog feed. You know, the bingo is just going to treat the people who, and there's some people come every week, very faithful, so we appreciate them. We have music, 3-4 times a week at lunch. Our lunches are, if you're over 60, on a donation basis, it's $5. If you're under 60, it's $6. We have takeout. If you want to call in the morning and say, I'd like a meal to pick up, you can pick that up at about 12:30. Those on a donation basis also are $6. So we usually have a pretty good group to do that too. We've got a group of people, volunteers, that come over from Nampa, Silvercrest, and they usually pick up like 15 meals. You know, so we depend a lot on volunteers. We have a good volunteer group, I being one of them. We have a good board of directors whose of course our main concern is the senior center. We have a new to you shop that's based all on donations. And we might, you might find 25 cents, 50 cents, $1, $2, depending what it is. That, of course, raises money for the center. Then we have a silent auction table. The nicer things that are donated are put on that table, silent auction. That money goes to the center. We're always looking for grants to apply for. We've just applied for one that we hope to win because we really need a new stove. I would venture to guess that the stove they're cooking on now has been there since the place was built. So we'd like a new stove. We'd also like a reader board, something that sets up a little higher, more visible. We can put messages on there because right now it's kind of low, and you have to put the letters in, and sometimes those letters disappear. Sometimes they're changed. So we can end up with really interesting messages on that message board. I think there's probably young kids who stroll by who think that's really fun. So, okay. Any questions?
Maybe a couple real quick and see if the council has any. How many volunteers would you say you have down there helping out with all everything you got going?
Oh my. I didn't count them up. On bingo night, probably the most, and we have like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 probably somewhere around 11 people just on Tuesday night. Every day at lunch, there's at least 3. There's probably 2 or 3 ladies who restock the new to you store. I'm thinking if there's anything else. There was always something, you know, that needs a volunteer for. We also have a pool room. I just about forgot about that. There's probably about 5 pool tables in there. Some of them need a little work on them, but we're not going to spend money on that right now because we have 5 employees that we have to pay, plus buy all the groceries. And as we all know, they're going up, you know, so we're doing the best we can. Our coordinator, Patty Brackett, we've stopped ordering from food service places like Food Service of America, etc. And Patty goes out and does the shopping for the groceries. And I've done it a few times, and it's a lot of work. It's really a lot of work. And she goes out maybe a couple of times a week and buys all the groceries. So, more?
Excellent. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Any questions from the council? Councilor McGee?
Just, Mr. Mayor, very quickly, every year since I've been here, we receive those funds from Republic Disposal, and we often are discussing with our budget folks, hey, what should we do with this? You know, what should we do with this? And I'm looking across the room to maybe perhaps remind us next year that this may be, that the reader board and a new oven might be and I don't know what the restrictions are on those funds, Mr. Mayor, but perhaps that's a way for us to use those funds. Seems like every year, I know since you and I've been on it, Mayor, we kind of look around at each other and say, well, what are we gonna spend this money on? But this might be a nice place to spend some of that.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. That would be excellent. So, and I don't really think there's much restrictions on it, but we can definitely look into that and keep it on the radar for next year. So, very good. Any other questions or comments? Maybe one last one for me. So, to play bingo, is there an age restriction? You have to be so old, or could I come down and lose some money one of these nights?
You have to be 18.
Well, I do meet that, that's for sure, so.
Beyond that, you can be anything you want. And we are licensed by the Idaho State Lottery.
Very good.
So we have to apply for that every year.
Very good. Sounds fun. And I won't wait till it gets to $500. I'll come down before that, so.
Oh, okay.
So, but no,
One
that'd
night,
be fun,
we
so.
did have a man there who won the $500. That's the one and only time we ever saw him.
Never came back,
You
so
know.
took his money and ran.
And I
So-
feel kind of bad about that because there's, you know, like I said, some people come every week faithfully. And to have somebody win it when it comes once, he was out of state, actually.
Yeah, I was gonna say Ada County, but yeah, maybe out of state, so.
So come play bingo with us. Come have lunch with us.
Yeah, definitely. No, we'll do. We'll
If
keep
anybody
that on
wants
there.
to look at a menu, I do have some here.
Uh-huh.
Not only is the menu, but it's all the activities going on.
Very good. No, that'd be great. Yeah, we appreciate that. So if you don't mind leaving that, I'd like to review that and look at it and anybody else, so. Very good. Well, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you taking the
All
time to
right.
come and
And
inform us a little bit, everything that you and all your volunteers do down there, so thank you.
Thank you,
So,
thank you. Well, and I want to thank the city because they're really good about if we need a light replaced or, you know, something fixed, they usually get right on it. So we appreciate that.
Very good. No, that's good to hear. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
and
Thank you again for coming down for all that you do, so. Okay, so that moves us to, audience participation. If there's anyone in the audience that'd like to speak on an item that is not on the agenda before us tonight, is there anyone in the audience that would do that? Okay, very good. So reflect, there was nobody that came forward. So that moves us to our consent calendar, which is before the council for approval.
Yes, Mayor.
Counselor McGee,
I move that the items on the consent calendar be approved.
and do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion from Counselor McGee and a second from Counselor Williams for approval of the consent calendar as printed. Madam Clerk, would you please, or do we have our, okay, yep, we do have the going up, perhaps. There we go. Okay. So we do have the motion for the approval of the consent calendar. If you'd please vote at this time. Maybe? Okay. So I think his yes was a yes vote, not a yes did it go in, so, if I'm not mistaken, so. Correct. Okay. Oh, is it working now? Okay, maybe it is working now, so, okay. See, now Counselor McGee's the only one that hasn't voted, so.
I thought it was recorded.
There we go, perfect, excellent. Okay, so all votes are in, if you want to lock the machine. One of these days, it's just gonna all flow just perfectly, so. Great. So let's see, do we have it? Can you pull it up to show the? Okay, there we go. So yes, so that passed unanimously, with, all counselors present voting in favor of the approval of the consent agenda. So that now moves us on to old business. Action item number 1 is a protest hearing for the creation of a local improvement district, number 22-1 for the Jefferson Park subdivision pump station rebuild, providing for the levying of assessment upon the properties to be benefited by such improvement and for the basis of making said assessments. If I remember correct, Mr. McDonald, I think you presented this at the last city council hearing, for the subdivision, I believe, where you reside, if I'm not mistaken. So if you want to make your presentation, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council. My name is Rob McDonald for the record, and I am the city engineer. I live in Jefferson Park subdivision, which is located immediately north of Jefferson Middle School. Jefferson Park was built, I'll try to keep this brief, but just a little bit of history. It was built primarily back in the 90s. The irrigation system is pressurized, but it's all private. The pump station has been privately maintained by volunteers in the neighborhood that have been willing to maintain it. And we have gotten to the point where the pump station is dilapidated and needs to be rebuilt. And the individuals who may have maintained it, and some of them are here tonight, want to retire from that responsibility. And so as we met together, one of the options that came to the table was forming an LID with the subdivision to rebuild the pump station, build it to city standards, CMID standards, Caldwell Municipal Irrigation District standards, and then dedicating the pump station to the city for perpetual maintenance and operation. The parcels then that are delineated would be annexed into Caldwell Municipal Irrigation District, where instead of paying their fees in the future to Pioneer and to the Water Users Association for the neighborhood, the assessments would go to the city, and then the city would treat this, the assessments like any other subdivision, where all the water rights are pooled and the city controls and maintains the pump station. The irrigation lines would remain private. Those do not meet city standards, and so the irrigation lines throughout the subdivision would not be maintained or owned by the city, just the pump station. A month ago, I came before the council with the resolution of intent to create the LID, and we set the public hearing for tonight. So tonight is the public hearing, and this gives the opportunity for all the individuals in this area to come and either express their support or protest this LID. I also sent out notices to all the property owners. And before we came last month with the intent to create this LID, a letter was sent out back in March, and we have worked very diligently to reach out to all the property owners to find out who's in favor of this. And with the tally that is attached in your packet, we received 74% in favor of this LID, which is 49 property owners out of 66. I received one response back from a property owner that was not in favor, and the rest were unresponsive. And so that puts us at 74%, which, the city's, threshold in the past has always been around 60%, which we feel very good about. It is our intent to have this public hearing, and then we hope that council will approve this LID, which will fund the construction of the new pump station. All of the properties within this LID will then, over the next 10 years, be assessed to reimburse the city back for that loan to rebuild this pump station. I received quotes a little while back to rebuild this pump station, and I talked to this contractor that the city has used quite a bit, just for the purpose of getting a quote. And their quote, which is good through January of 2023, estimated the cost to be about $92,000 to rebuild this pump station to meet city standards. If the LID is approved tonight, then we will take the project and put it out to bid, and hopefully get bids better than the quote that I have. But I'm confident that at least that contractor is willing to bid on it and maintain that quote, and that is what helped us establish what the estimated costs are going to be for all the property owners. Once the contractor's on board this off-season, irrigation off-season, they would rebuild the pump station. And once the pump station is rebuilt and approved by the city, it would then be dedicated to the city, and the city would take over operation and maintenance of that pump station. And then the assessments for all these property owners would then go to the city instead of Pioneer and the Water Users Association. I just want to thank there are a few property owners here, and especially Mr. Wilcox, who has been, you can raise your hand, who has been maintaining this pump station basically for free as a volunteer for the last several years, and it's helped keep our neighborhood green, and we really appreciate that. And we feel like at this point now it's time for the neighborhood to take this next step, which is more consistent with how new neighborhoods are developed. The city maintains those irrigation pump stations. That's a lot of information, and I think that's all I need to share at this point. I am happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Any questions from council?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor McGee?
And Mr. McDonald, I think you have to do this, right? This is the right way to go. My question is, what's the average amount that a resident is going to pay over time in order to pay for the $92,000?
I appreciate that question. Mr. Mayor, Councilman McGee, I had put together in the first letter I sent out in March, I had put all those estimates together. So the LID, the cost to build the pump station is $92,000. That is split between 66 property owners. There's also a 10% fee that is on top of that for all of the design and the administration of the LID. And what that comes out to be for each property owner is, the estimate I have here is $1,545. And so that, of course, in an LID is paid over 10 years, and so they would have an annual payment that would be closer to $155 a year to pay off the LID.
$10 a month.
Yeah, $12 a month or roughly.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Councilor Holgood.
You know, Rob, I don't know whether this falls under your purview or not, but do we have a number of these private wells around the city like this? Or is this something that we're seeing, that we're dealing with more than just in this neighborhood?
There are several private irrigation systems throughout the city. The issue that we had in this subdivision is this subdivision does not have an HOA. And so there's not a great operating mechanism to maintain that pump station. And so many years back, a Water Users Association was created. But it's been clunky at best, and there's no way to enforce people to pay their dues or anything like that. It's been very difficult. Throughout the city, we do have other private systems, and I imagine that there may be other neighborhoods in the city that are going through this same issue that may not be aware of the LID option. or they, you know, they may be operating just fine, but I'm sure that there are several out there.
Thank you so much. Any other questions for Mr. McDonald? Okay, very good. So we only have one person signed up, for this item, and they're signed up in support, and that is Mr. Wilcox. Did you want to say anything, Mr. Wilcox? Okay, just that you're in support, and you don't want Rob to take over for you and let him do it for the next 20 years? So, well, we appreciate you doing that. I'm sure Rob appreciates it too, so putting that effort in. So, with that, there is nobody else signed up for this item. So is there a motion to close the public testimony portion of this hearing?
So moved.
In a second? So we have a motion from Counselor Stodic and a second from Counselor McGee to close the public testimony portion of this hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. So with that, before you is, Bill and Art, so I do need to read this by title only, is that correct? Okay. So this is Bill number 50, ordinance number 3444, an ordinance of the City of Caldwell, Idaho, creating local improvement district number 22-1 for the Jefferson Park subdivision pump station rebuild, providing for the levying of assessments upon the properties to be benefited by such improvements, and for the basis of making said assessments, setting forth the properties to be included in said district, providing for making the assessment roll, authorizing the publication of a call for construction. So do we have a motion or a sponsor of Bill number 50, ordinance number 3444?
Mayor,
Councilor Williams.
I move to sponsor bill number 50, ordinance number 3444. I move for passage by title only and approve the summary for publication.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion for Counselor Williams and a second for Counselor Stodic, for passage of Bill number 50, ordinance number 3444, by title only on its first reading. And we do have it up and ready for the voting, it appears, and it is open, so if you could go ahead and cast your vote. And all are cast, so we close the voting, and that motion passes unanimously. So that has been approved. So that moves us on to action item number 2. This is to consider Bill number 48, ordinance number 3443, appropriation ordinance for FY 2022-23, with a request to move for its passage by title only. Oh, was it? Oh, sorry. Are we? I apologize. We're in old business still. I forgot. So, trying to get ahead of us. I know we're trying to get Counselor Doty to the rodeo. So, and maybe myself too. So, so yes, that moves us to old business item number 2.
How quickly we forgot the anniversary in the room.
Oh, yes, that's right. Sorry about that. So, this is to consider Bill number 50, ordinance number 3444, for the creation of LID number 22-1. Wait, we just did that one.
It's
So we're number 3.
that we're doing.
Okay. Well, this should be a quick one too. So this is a continued item, which is actually requesting to be continued yet again to a date certain of Thursday, September 15th, 2022 at 6 p.m. So do we have a motion for the continuation of old business action item number 3, and that would be to Thursday, September 15th, 2022.
So moved.
So we have a motion from Counselor McGee, I believe, and a second from Counselor Stodic, again, to continue this item to Thursday, September 15th, 2022, which is the item, number is Vacation VAC-22-01. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. So that motion passes, and we will hear that item again under old business on September 15th. Now we can move to new business. So that moves us to action item number 1 in new business, and that is pursuant to Idaho State Code 50-1002 for consideration of the proposed budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2022, and ending September 30th, 2023. And Rochelle, I'm gonna guess that this is you. So, very good. So Rochelle is our interim treasurer and finance director at the moment. So we appreciate everything that she's doing and stepping up. She's doing a tremendous job. So thank you for being here tonight, Rochelle.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Rochelle Castleberry. I am the interim treasurer for the City of Caldwell. I'm here tonight to, move forward with a public hearing for the passage of the proposed budget for the fiscal year 22-23. There was a, total expenditure budget of $122,191,898, which is a $14,459,484 increase from the prior year, which is a 13.4% increase in expenditures. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Very good. So, I may just ask a quick question, and we'll jump into the city council. So with that increase, I believe a good portion of that, I know Mr. Orton is not here, maybe Rob can speak to this, is some, I think, improvements out at the sewer plant. Is that correct in regards to that, or can you touch on that?
Yes, there's a $10 million or $12 million use of fund balance in the sewer fund for equipment storage and dewatering facility for the wastewater treatment plant. There's also, there were also increases in new positions and wage increases, and let's see. But I think that was the biggest increase, was in the wastewater treatment plant. The total expenditures for the wastewater treatment plant was $26,801,740.
Perfect. Excellent. And that was from their fund balance specifically for the sewer fund, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Specifically from the sewer fund balance.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you so much. Questions from council? Councilor McGee.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I think that's a good point. And Rashad, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you did pull that out, right, knowing that that's a major component of the increase, do we have any idea what the overall increase would be without that $10 million? I recognize I'm putting you on the spot.
Well, it's a $14.4 million increase overall, so if you were to reduce the $12 million increase, then you'd see probably a $2.43 million increase overall without that.
Percentage-wise?
Oh, percentage-wise?
Yeah. Obviously greatly reduced. I know I'm putting you on the spot to try to give us a number, but I'm a history major. I apologize.
Well, let me
Mr.
do
Mayor,
some math in my head.
Got my calculator out, so.
Your
yeah.
comment, Mr. Mayor, I think it's the increase is substantially reduced
Yes.
when you pull that money.
Yes, I'd say, I mean, it's a 13% increase, and I'd say 10% approximately is probably related to that.
Good enough for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yes, Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick question, it's redundant, and just for the record's sake, how many new positions are we creating with this new budget?
I can't answer that off the top of my brain right now, because not being involved in the detailed process, with, the transition that's going on right now.
Good. Sorry, I didn't mean to, again,
But
put you
there
on
are
the spot.
several, yeah. I don't know exactly how many overall citywide. I don't
So
have those
it's around
numbers.
30, I believe.
Okay.
Is that,
I know we were thinking it was around 25, so I think you had 25 to 30. I think it's right
okay,
in between there, so.
thank you again.
So I'll keep asking you tough questions, Rochelle.
Okay.
So, the $10 million that you're talking about, or $10 to $12 million that is dedicated to the sewer fund,
Mhm.
that is the 22-23 budget part of, or is that the budget that, because I'm aware that we're gonna do a budget amendment next
Yes.
for $13 million.
Mhm.
Which of those budgets is that $10 million
That's
in?
coming out of next fiscal year budget, so
That's
the
next fiscal year, but
22-23.
that's not part of what we're
Yes,
doing now.
that's for, additions that have not, or projects that have not occurred yet.
And
Not in this current fiscal year.
And of the money that we're approving or considering in this process right now, a significant amount of money is coming from the American Recovery Plan Act as well?
That is included in the budget amendment.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, a significant portion of the budget amendment is part of the, revenue or funds received for the American Rescue Plan Act.
Very good. Other questions? Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Don't go too far. There may be some more questions coming up. So obviously, this is a public hearing item, so we do not have Anybody signed up in favor or in neutral? We do have one individual signed up in opposition. Jean Kreidenbring, did I say that? I always get the last name wrong, Phil, so, yes. So if you'd like to come forward and just state your name for the record, and the time is yours, and then there may be some questions afterwards, so.
Okay. So my name is Jean Kreitbring, and I serve as the president of the Caldwell Ladies Golf Association, and in turn, serve on the golf board. Please understand that I am not a political person, but I do have a few concerns. The golf courses and the city's financial stability are of utmost concern to me. The city is proposing to add a new position to oversee the event center, parks, recreation, cemetery, and the golf courses. This has been tried 3 times in the past, with one time the job going to the mayor's assistant. Now Caldwell is trying again, to the tune of $90,000. I have 2 concerns. First, each department supposedly chipped in 20%, but it's buried in the budget somewhere, which is unfair. The proposed expenditures for Parks and Recreation is $2,997,153. The expenditures for the cemetery is $405,551. $435,752 for the event center, and $1,598,960 for golf. That total expenditure is $5,437,416. That means Parks and Recreation is 55% of the total. The event center is 8%, the cemetery is 7.5%, and the golf fund is 29%. However, the event center nor the golf fund receive any tax dollars. They are self-sufficient. Parks has 19.19% of property tax revenue. Recreation is 11.32%, and the cemetery is a whopping 39.5%. Doing the math, I am not understanding how 20% each is equitable, necessary, or fair. The Parks and Recreation has a lot more money and should be chipping in over half the expenses of this new position. And if the golf courses nor the event center receive any tax dollars, they should not be contributing to the new position. In my opinion, the city may need a manager over Parks, Recreation, and the event center, but certainly not the golf courses. The city spent a considerable amount of money to hire 2 professionals to run and manage the golf course, Brett Williams in the pro shop and Ken Wheeler over landscape and maintenance. Both take extreme pride in their job. Brett Williams was specifically hired to manage the course, right the ship, and bring it back into the black because the city took back overseeing the course. He has done that successfully. Now the city wants to hire a manager to manage the manager of the golf course. Brett understands the finances, the financial aspect, and the budget. He specializes in, and his degree is in running golf operations. He has successfully managed 5 previous golf courses that were in the red, getting them financially sound. With your new proposal, there will now be 2 points of contact instead of just 1. This makes absolutely no sense. You hired Brett to be a manager. Let him manage the course. Right now, Ken is struggling to find personnel. That wasted 20% kicked in by the golf fund would be better served to raise the hourly wage. Currently, the starting rate is a measly $12 per hour for the landscape department. Who in the world wants to work for $12 an hour when they can go to various other establishments and work for $15 or $20 per hour or more? It's the workers at the golf courses that maintain the appearance or greet the public or serve the customers, not the manager of the manager. The city's first priority should be to get workers, not hire more managers for the head shed. I strongly oppose the new position. It is a waste of money, specifically in regard to the golf course, when we already have 2 managers in place that desperately need personnel. I implore you to rethink the grand scheme of this new position and not take unnecessary money away from the golf course. Questions?
Thank you so much. So, any questions? I may just kind of clarify a little bit, on that, and then obviously maybe some questions from council, and if you have any additional questions as well. So, currently how it works, so the intention is not to add an additional manager on top of Brett. It's really replacing the person that he reports to. So currently, the golf course, the Caldwell Event Center, the cemetery, they report to an appointed official who is the finance director. And so obviously the finance director is hired to manage the finances, but the way that it's been done in the past right now, for example, the city engineer manages the parks department. And so by creating the Park and Rec director, the hope is that not adding an additional manager on top of the manager, it just changes who the parks department, changes who Brett reports to. Right now, Brett reports to the finance director. And so in lieu of the finance director, he would actually report to the Parks and Rec director. So he would still be the manager doing what he's doing. It just, instead of having the finance director over the golf department, which again, I don't think makes much sense, it would be the Parks and Rec director over that. So try not to add any bureaucracy, any new positions, just who does that person report to? So like, for example, Ken and Brett, rather than, again, reporting to the finance director, running everything through that position, it'd be through the Parks and Rec director itself, so.
So then I have a question.
Yeah.
Is the Parks and Rec person gonna be a finance person? Because ultimately, they're gonna have to go to them and say, this is the money we need, and then they're gonna have to go to the finance director and say, this is the money we need. So that is still 2 steps instead of just 1.
So it'd be, I mean, like, for example, any appointed official has to create their budget, work with the finance director, on that. I'll keep picking on Rob since he's here. So for example, with the engineering department, when he runs, he's an engineer, not a CPA, but when he does that, he works with the finance director to figure out their budget, make sure it balances, things like that. So it'd be the same thing for the Parks and Rec director. Yeah, they would need to work with the finance director to make sure their budget balances, things like that. But the goal is actually to try to make it more efficient, rather than, Parks and Rec director should have some understanding of, how a golf course functions, things like that, where a finance director really doesn't. And so hopefully it could alleviate some of that concern. And I understand, the concern of, are we creating a new position? Now we have a manager on top of a manager. It's really just reallocating, because there is somebody that Brett reports to. He doesn't report directly to the mayor. And we can't really have that, because then we'd have numerous people reporting to me. So that's why we have those appointed positions, those directors, so that they can report to me in regards to the employees that they oversee. So that's kind of the decision. And I don't know as far as right now if it's, and I looked to Rochelle, and I'm not sure, again, we're putting her on the spot, because you mentioned about how 20% is going from each to that.
Which is
So,
totally unfair.
and I don't know how the layout now is, if each of those give a percentage to pay for the finance director that's over them. I don't know if that's in the equation right now or not. So that's something we'd have to look into on that. But that's kind of the reasoning for that creation of that position. It's gonna be a new position that they'll report to, not another manager on top of that
But
manager.
Parks and Rec has a lot more money than anybody else. Why aren't they paying the majority of it?
Yeah.
That's what I don't get.
Mhm.
How can you take 20% and divide it equally when one of them doesn't even get $1 million in their budget, and then you're adding that they have to take out of there? It's not fair. The math does not make any sense in my looking at it. Parks and Rec should be paying for the majority of the new position, because they're the largest department.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how that came up. We can definitely look into it. And like I said, I don't know if that's just how it was before, like now, if each of those pay 20% to the finance director position, because that's overseen, or how that calculation came up. I'm not sure, but we can try to find out for sure on that, because, I mean, that is a valid point on that regard, so. Any questions from any of the council?
I would like to know too, how you're going to increase the wages. I mean, you're spending money on higher up things, but you're not doing anything to raise the rates for the ones that actually work for the city and for the golf courses. those that have stayed stagnant. They can't get personnel. We can't even have any, shotguns anymore because Ken has lost 3 more employees and he doesn't have enough time to get the course prepared. So we need help, and a manager is not going to help hire somebody to cut the grass unless the manager wants to do that.
Yeah, and I know that there was, I know you'd mentioned about the $12, that's been increased to $15, if I'm not mistaken, on that, trying to get more people incentivized to come and do that. You know, there was the 10% raise that was approved by council, a few months back for all, and that was for all employees throughout the entire city, minimum of 10%, even up to 15% for those lower paid. Like you mentioned, if you were a level 1 or level 2, which is the entry level, they actually received 15 and 14% raises. So I know there's things that have been done. Still difficult to try to find people to come in
Is that
on
through
that.
Personnel Plus though too, or is just that city employees?
So those are city employees. As far as the Personnel Plus, I don't know what they've done. I know that for the temporary
Nothing.
with parks, we did the $15
Nothing.
an hour on that, so. Okay. Any questions from council or any other comments? Okay. We do appreciate that very much, and we will look into that, those percentages, and try to see if there's something we do make that equitable in that regards, and kind of, like I said, I don't know if that's just how it was done, so it carried forward, but we can definitely look into that, for that,
Okay.
so.
So
Okay.
I stand on
Yes, Councilor
opposing.
Williams.
It's not for Gene, so forgive me,
Oh.
but I think it fits here. How do enterprise funds fit in then to the golf course? Because those can't be spent on a manager, or can they?
I would not know the answer, but Rochelle, can you, on that, do you mind allowing her to come? Yes, thank you so much, Jean.
If you want, I can talk to you more in detail afterwards too, because there's many things that I could potentially assist you with understanding.
It's my understanding
Yeah.
that that position is buried in labor. You can't see, you know, it's just lumped into labor.
So when you talk about the positions that are temp, those are. The other positions are not lumped into labor, but we have done some minimal increases there. And I don't know what's been talked about, but I can let you know what we've done in the past and then give an idea of what we plan to move forward with, hoping into, you know, future years. The golf department for this year is doing better than it ever has before, and I would hope that they can put a little focus on that moving forward. But that being said, the position as far as the director position, I don't know how that was financed, but I don't know if that 20% is accurate for how it's being funded. I don't know if anybody else here has heard of those numbers. But my assumption is that might be a little different than where you got your information from, and I could look into it, but I think I'd have to refer to our HR director and identify exactly how that. My assumption would be that most of the cost would be coming out of Parks and Rec, which is, like you said, has the most money. The other funds within government, not consistent of golf, are funded, if they have losses, they are made whole by the general fund. So if it increases to the cost for this director go there, ultimately, there will be funds moving in there from the general fund to assist with funding that. And I don't know if it's in golf's budget to include a piece of this, but again, I'd have to confirm that, and I can confirm that for you and let you know.
Yeah. So kind of, and Councilor Miyu was kind of commenting, a lot of this came from our former finance director who's no longer with the city. Those numbers, so Rochelle kind of coming into this late hour, so we appreciate her stepping in. So a lot of those came from the former finance director, those proposals. So like, should definitely look into that, and we can find out what those numbers really are and see if we need to make some of those adjustments. And I believe we can make those adjustments as we go through the budget year, if we need to make it more equitable, you know, where the golf department's not being hurt. Parks Department, really, they're the gist of it, so the majority of the money should come from there. So we can find out, and if not, we can make those tweaks for sure. So, if I'm not mistaken, is that?
Yeah, that's
okay?
Correct. We can always look.
Yeah, so we're not changing the budget numbers, we're just kind of reallocating where it's coming from, so. Does that answer some of those questions? And then maybe just real quick on Councilor Williams' question about, Rochelle,
Enterprise.
yes, the enterprise fund regarding using the money to pay out of an enterprise fund.
If enterprise does have funds that's used, I mean, we have allocated costs, separate costs like that, and it would just go to the division. I believe that is okay. We've done that for the administrative services that have been provided for golf. I think we have split and put costs into that, so, as long as the split is done, it's okay, and I think it would be a proper use of the enterprise funds. We just have to identify that in the position of who's paying for it.
Excellent, thank you so much. Okay, awesome. Yes, any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, just so I understand, so the folks that work for, Ken, they will not get the 10% raise, is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. I don't believe because they were temp. I know that we did do increases, and we did do some to golf, but I believe there was an error. I'll admit that, and I am currently looking into that. We've had a lot of turnaround in the finance position, but that was brought to me before she left with, some increases that were talked about but not flown down, and so we have to retroactively, prepare those fixes for some of those temp employees. But we are trying to currently increase the wages for the temp employees because we do need employees out there.
Very good. Counselor McGee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I would add to that, and I think this is more of almost a next year discussion, but it's not just Ken's employees that we're having trouble with, and we've had these discussions about trying to raise wages across the board. All city government is in very similar position. Frankly, a lot of businesses are in the same position. You know, you drive around communities now and you see on fast food places, begging for employees to come at $15, $18 an hour. It's a difficult time to try to hire people in those entry-level positions. It probably behooves us moving forward next year to discuss different approaches and different strategies that we can use to try to raise those wages or provide other incentives but it's a difficult market across the board for those entry-level positions right now.
And yeah, thank you for those comments. Was there any other?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
just,
Counselor.
I painfully attended the Canyon County budget meeting last night, and they're having the same problems everybody is. They think the commissioners are making too much money for the time that they spent, but the folks that do the actual work, are not making enough money and they're losing them, so we have to take that in consideration too, so.
Yeah.
In this whole overall plan.
Yeah, no, it's been a,
Right, the only thing I can speak to is the golf course, because that's what I know firsthand, and what people are being paid out there, and that, they can't fool them.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
yeah, no, definitely. It sounds like there was an error that was found. We appreciate Rochelle finding that. Like I said, there's been some changes in the finance department recently, so continue to look at that, and we'll definitely find those answers for you. And I've got your contact info, so I'll make sure I get that to Rochelle, so we'll find out those numbers for you and make sure that, look at that, make sure that it's an equitable resource for that. So, because yeah, we want to continue the golf course to grow. It's an amazing resource that we have, and I agree with you, Brett and Ken do an amazing job out there. So we want to support them as much as we can for sure. So we appreciate you being there in those comments. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor, just
Yes.
one last comment. I would just encourage you to make sure, once the numbers are all straight, that you coordinate that with Councilman McGee, because you're still the rep, right, on the golf? So make sure that he gets satisfied too with what he sees, so.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and Councilman Stoddard. We had a pretty robust conversation about this on Wednesday morning, and so, yeah, if we could, I'm happy to present those numbers to the golf committee. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for bringing that up. So it'd be good to review that at the next golf board commission meeting that you have. So.
Can we get those numbers before the next golf board meeting?
Yeah, we'll get, so as soon as we get those, I'm sure Rochelle can get those for you much sooner than that. And we'll get them over to you as soon as we can. So, okay, thank you so much. Okay, any other discussion, questions for staff or anything like that in regards to the proposed budget? Yes.
I do have some more questions,
Okay,
if
yes.
you don't mind.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether Rochelle can answer this or maybe yourself, but the $10 million for the sewer plant is coming out of sewer fund balance. They're an enterprise fund. It would be my understanding, I'm just looking for confirmation, this is a one-time expenditure for upgrades at the sewer plant?
It's capital, one-time capital expenditure for
So this
improvements.
wouldn't
I
be
mean,
an
it
ongoing-
might flow through if the project isn't completed in that fiscal year. You might see some usage, but that's only if the project isn't completed within the fiscal year.
And that money is funded through sewer fees, that's not
Yes.
tax dollars?
Has nothing to do with increment and tax funding.
Okay, and so, when you look at our overall budget, the budget that's being proposed this evening is 122 million. 10 million of that is the sewer fund. Another, I think I saw 6.2 million is the ARPA fund, the American Recovery Plan Act.
Yes, that's in there as well. That, that is the amount of funding, the second tranche that we received. And that's the potential use of those funds for next fiscal year.
And then one other thing I just wanted to highlight, just so we're all clear, of the 122 million that would be the overall city budget, 21.7 million would be the tax dollars involved in our overall budget. Is that the right number? That is total property tax revenue for this year?
Yeah, the 21.7
Yeah.
is the, yes,
Which is approximately 1.5 million higher than it was last year.
correct.
Very good, excellent. Any other questions for Rochelle or discussion from the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilor McGee.
I think the council recognizes that I've been somewhat supportive of this budget and this approach, since you brought it forward, Mayor. My question is, and I think I've probably asked 10 times ad nauseum, right? We know that we are taking an approach with this budget where we're drawing down a lot of the reserve funds that are in each department. I think we all recognize that. What I think, my concern is making sure that we have enough money on hand should something happen. We call it rainy day fund, reserve fund, whatever you want to call it. This is probably the single most important decision that the council makes every year. And so I want to support this. I think it's heading in the right direction. The only thing that gives me a little bit of reluctance is making sure that should we have some sort of unexpected expense, or should the economy take a downturn that affects us, that we have enough money on hand to take care of what we need to take care of. And so, Rochelle, I know I'm putting you a little bit on the spot, and I think all of us understand your situation, that you're coming into this a little bit cold, and so I think there's a lot of grace here. But help me understand, in this budget, how much money in reserve are we holding in case there is a problem, in case there is an unexpected expense?
I'm gonna use the numbers from last year to give you this figure. It does not include any increases this year, because I have not looked at that. I know that there was an approximation of general fund balance last year in the $20,000 range, or $20 million range, I think. I know that in our financials, there is a figure that is estimated to be kept there. Looking at this, that's a golf fund. Is it 20, that's 10, that is 15. So out of the 20 million proposed use of fund balance, 17 million of that is coming from enterprise funds. Okay, so that means that 3 million, let's go on the high end, 4 million of that is coming from general fund. I would propose that would leave at least 6 million plus in the general fund, which is close to the number in the audit, which states that we should have for, kept on hand for their projection as to what we should have. I can confirm that with you and give you set figures, but that's what I'm gonna give you for now.
And kind of maybe just touching on that too, with the fund balance, so the like Rochelle mentioned, the majority by far is sewer fund balance, and that is actually
Okay.
completely separate from our general fund balance. There's I don't know the exact number, but it's close to $50 million in our sewer and water fund balance right now. So that 17 million we're talking about is coming from that 50 million, not from the general fund balance of between 6 to 10 million, I'd say, in there. So that's not any part of this whatsoever. It's really that sewer fund, which I think the sewer fund's around 25 million itself, and the water is around 14 million, from what I remember. So the majority of that by far is coming from that really excessive, large fund balance we have in our sewer fund, and not affecting the general fund balance at all.
Yeah, and that doesn't include numbers from this year, which we'll talk more about at the next council session. But in the budget amendment we're doing this year, we are actually decreasing the original proposed use of fund balance in fiscal year '22. So we're still using quite a bit of fund balance, but we are projecting to use less of what we originally anticipated.
Mr. Mayor, Rochelle, do you have I don't expect you to give me an exact number, but do you have a ballpark number on what that reduction looks like?
Yeah, I think I have it.
Ballpark is fine.
So we originally proposed to use in this current fiscal year, we originally proposed to use 12.4 million in fund balance, and with the budget amendment, we actually are only going to use 12.2, so it's not a huge savings. And in looking at actual trends in comparison to past performance, when you look at what we budget and what we have expenditure-wise, we tend to come in under budget, and so I would assume that this year we will see the same.
Mr. Mayor and Rochelle, so we think, we're certain that we have around $6 million in general fund balance. The mayor would say between 6 and 10. I'll go on the minimum just to be on the safe side for this discussion. Although we're using around $12 million of fund balance from different departments, there's still additional fund balance that remains in those departments. Is that an accurate statement?
Correct. This 12 million that I'm referring to includes enterprise funds. So like the mayor said, there's a significant higher balance of fund balance for the enterprise funds, water and sewer, which are all funded by fees for future projected projects. And so a lot of the fund balance uses that has been budgeted in the past and currently budgeted in the upcoming year is coming out of those enterprise funds and not necessarily affecting the general fund.
And then, Mr. Mayor and Rochelle, I recognize that you're in a tough position, especially on some of these drill down questions. And again, I'm willing to give you a lot of grace here. So
thank you.
Pulling out those enterprise fund balances, let's just set those aside for a moment. And you look at the remaining city department fund balances, whether it be the police department or the fire department or whatever. Do you have an approximate number of what's left after we've pulled out this $12 million to spend? In an approximation is fine.
You mean in the general fund, or what? Because the 12 million is, you mean you just pulling out the enterprise funds?
Yeah, just pulling those out, and you're looking at the rest of city government.
Are you talking, but you mentioned fire and police, you mean pulling those out too?
No.
Or no?
I mean just pulling out, because sewer and water obviously are the big ones that we're talking about, right? What I'm trying to get my arms around, how much money's left in the bank account, in the savings account, right? Once we make this decision. And so I'm trying to put in my mind, okay, we've got $6 to $10 million in general fund reserves that are sitting there unearmarked, right? But there are additional dollars, I believe, in department by department in their fund balances still that we didn't use to make this $12 million infusion. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I was trying to get to is about how much that money is, right? So what I'm trying to get to in my mind is we have a $122 million budget that we're probably about to pass. We know we've got $6 million on hand in case we need it, in case things go south. I'm just trying to understand, in addition to that $6 to $10 million, trying to figure out, is there additional funding that we can add to that should something happen? Are there additional rainy day funds sitting out there?
Rainy day funds sitting out there?
Let me use a
No.
different term because I confused you with that. Fund balance funds.
The fund balances that we have, are assigned, like you said,
Right.
to specific areas. And I think, legislation identifies that we have to use it for that. As far as having any set aside for rainy day, I don't know. I'd have to honestly look at it again with that
I used-
perspective, cause
For
I've
sure,
never
I used the wrong
taken
term
it
because
that way.
I confused you with the rainy day term.
Uh-huh.
What I'm just generally looking for is trying to add up in my mind, okay, Parks and Rec has this much in their fund.
Mm-hmm.
X agency has this much, right? I'm looking at a very big picture, 30,000 foot. Okay, if things go south, this is what we have, so.
So assuming we have 6 million in this fund that you're referring to, this, excess, out of this year's budget, we have a $20 million increase or use of fund balance. 17 million is enterprise, which isn't gonna affect that 6 million.
Right.
So potentially, if you were to use another 3 million of that, that would bring us down to potentially 3 million, but I wanna say that doesn't sound right from the numbers that I've looked at. I would have to revisit it again. So that's all I can give you for now. I wanted to, when we did the financials last year, I thought there was a $10 million fund balance that I saw. So I was looking at that 10 million number, in the general fund. Okay, so the general fund had 10 million. I know that that's dispersed across all the areas of the general fund, and only specific uses for those, are appropriate. But overall, if you want to take that and lump it all together, you have that 10 million, then you'd have 6 million for the rainy day. That would leave 4, of which 3 or so we're using in this proposed budget. As far as where that specific bucket is gonna be coming from in general, I'd have to sit down and do an analysis of the fund balance. I haven't.
And that's fine. And I
taken it to
kind of
that depth.
expected that since you're relatively new to this position, that you wouldn't have those numbers. I think I'm somewhat satisfied for a little bit. I mean, let's use the mayor's high number. Let's use the number of 10 million, right? So if you've got 10 million in reserves and on a $122 million budget, and I know that's very general. I know we have some exceptions to that. You're looking at, what, a 12%. Again, my history major is showing, but you're looking at a certain percentage based on your overall budget, and that's what I'm trying to drill down to. What is that percentage that we have based on our overall budget that we can be assured that we're gonna have enough money should something happen? So I'll stop.
No, it's good discussion, and I was trying to pull up some of those numbers.
And I know, I understand what you're asking for, and I know I could find the answer for you. I unfortunately just don't have it right now in front of me. I wasn't.
Appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Michelle.
For sure. Counselor Allgood, did you have?
I think
Oh,
Mr.
yeah,
Stoddard.
Counselor Stoddard, sorry.
And I just want to dovetail a little bit off what Councilman McGee said. In my prior life with the Simplot Company, I had a little over a $300 million budget, and that was raw potatoes, field departments all over the United States and kind of everything. Anyway, our finance director always told us that if we could maintain a 25% fund balance or rainy day fund, that we'd always be in good shape. And I was with him almost 30 years, and it worked quite fine with us. And I know, Councilman McGee, if that would be a number or a number that you'd be satisfied. But last night, when I was in that painful budget hearing at the county, even Mr. Waite agreed that the 25% was a good number.
Yes.
And the county was actually below that, and that's what he was concerned about. So
Oh.
if we could maybe work at that number, Mr. Mayor, the 25%, I think that would probably satisfy Mr. McGee's concerns and maybe some of the other folks too, because that seems to be a benchmark or a norm for good accounting practices and staying in the black rather than going in the red. So
Yeah.
I'll just add that as a comment.
Yeah, no, appreciate that very much.
Yeah,
Yes.
I had another question, but going on Mr. Stoddick's, statement, if we were doing 25%, that would need to be general fund 25%, because the sewer and water, they're already
Mhm.
there. It's the general fund 25%. So when I look at a budget, my big concern is that when we are, doing a number here, government budgets don't tend to go down. And so we're setting benchmarks whenever we approve a new budget. And so I'm very careful that when we discuss a new budget, that we're not adopting a budget that next year hampers us in moving forward with whatever our needs are next year. I wanna make sure, that, when we look at this, we say, this is something that, based on our revenue projections, it can go forward, and we can still meet our obligations, including do the necessary improvements next year to maintain where we're at. And so, again, I'm sorry, Rochelle, but, this budget, includes a lot of fund balance, and this budget includes a lot of, the Recovery Act money. Next year, when we sit here and do this budget, those numbers will not be there, because these are one-time things. The Recovery Act is done, correct? Is that your understanding? It's my understanding, that this is the last year for that money.
I'm not,
That is not correct. We have
Huh?
till 2024 to expend the funds, and,
Oh, okay.
I mean, 2024 to, encumber the funds, and 26 to spend the funds.
Okay, all right, so, but the next step of this is, in next year's budget, urban renewal is sunsetting at the end of this year.
Correct.
So tax dollars that currently flow to urban renewal today will flow to general fund revenue in 2023.
Yes, some of it will come back to the Caldwell district.
And that will allow us to meet our obligations ongoing is my, that's not.
For the funds, yes, for the funds that we're using ARPA funding for, that are operating funds, that are continuous, not one-time expenditures, that we plan to use the additional funding received in next fiscal year, or the fiscal year following that, to, assist with maintaining those operating expenses,
That's,
wages
yeah.
and whatnot.
Thank you.
excellent, thank you. Other
Yeah, Mr.
discussion?
Mayor.
Yes, Counselor Stott?
I just wanted to add more caveat or comment to this. In the private business sector, we don't get federal funds, so that 25% I was talking about did not include any federal funds. So just make that clear.
Yeah, most of the time with federal funding, that doesn't affect fund balance, because your revenue offsets your expenditure each year. So it's just a one-time cost, one-time revenue influx. It doesn't affect the fund balance.
Okay. Other discussion, questions for Rochelle, or? Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Did a great job, so, very good. Okay, so with that, let's see if I can get back to, got so many tabs open now on my computer here. Okay, so that gets us back to, again, we're on new business item number 1. And so, yes, we do need to close the public portion of this, or public testimony portion of this hearing. So do we have a motion to close the public testimony portion of this hearing? So hold on one second. So do you wish to come and speak? Okay, so we have those sheets. So we just need to get your name on the sheets.
My name on the sheet. Alan Wolf.
Okay, just
Okay,
a
one
moment.
second, just a minute, sir. And is this in regards to the budget that we're discussing?
Yeah, I've got the newspaper article.
Okay, so
that
just one
shows
second. So our clerk's bringing you this paper, so just so you can get your name on there, so we have it.
In opposition. Yeah, in opposition. Yeah. Yeah, I signed that one over there, but that's all right. Oh, I think it was. Okay,
Okay, so if you don't mind stating your name for the record,
Wolf.
and then you'll have five minutes for your testimony.
Alan Wolf, yes. First thing, in regards to what the man from Simplot said, they did use federal money this whole last 50 years that they've been in business. They had one wall there that they didn't ever tear down because they got $1 million from the federal government to start that plant out there. And that wall was sacrosanct because they paid that $1 million back at $1 a year. Now, that's the first thing that I know for certain. Okay. I'd like to know what the focus of this city council meeting is with the municipal swimming pool that's there.
So to address that, I know that, as we were discussing, so the swimming pool is planned for construction, and Mr. McDonald can jump in on this. So we were talking about the fund balance. So I'm gonna go back to, let's see if I can find the tab that I had up that kind of showed this last year's fund balance. So in regards to the swimming pool, there were some questions about the fund balance being used. Some of that is actually for the swimming pool because it was planned obviously for last year. Since that didn't happen, that money was there, moved into this year's budget as fund balance. So looking at last year's final budget, looking in the fund balance categories, there's several of them. One of them is assigned for city projects of around just under $6.7 million. And so that probably won't be in what you're looking at. It's what I'm looking at from the end of last year's budget. So that fund balance obviously carried forward to this year. And so that will be getting used due to the ability to not have that constructed last year. So that is part of that fund balance being used because it was a carryover from last year due to outside issues, resources that just weren't available. We weren't able to build the pool last year. So that's in this budget year, using that money that was, again, allotted it a few years ago, just has continued to kept coming forward. So it is proposed to be built and will be built this coming.
I looked through this Parks and Recreation and the Parks Fund and all that, and it doesn't add up to very much.
So
Yeah.
probably the reason for that is because that money, as I mentioned, is coming from fund balance, because it was in a prior year's budget. And so that money just rolled forward into that fund balance, and that's where that money is coming from. It's from assigned for city projects fund balance, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay,
on
the
that.
Parks and Recreation building that they're building right now, is that in this year's expenditures, or is that in next year's expenditures, or is that in, community building projects? Is that $5 million up from 400,000 to $5 million? Does that reflect that building? Or is that the complete price of that building?
And I don't know the complete price for that, but that's similar to the pool where it was budgeted for another previous year, was not able to get constructed during that year. Obviously, it's under construction now to be completed in December of this year. So that would be, again, most likely under that assigned for city projects fund balance that's carried forward from years previous.
Well, it was $5 million that it went up from 400,000 to 5 million. So I would expect that would be the complete price of that building, because that building isn't worth more than 5 million.
So, and do you know, Rochelle, on that, the cost of that building, or?
I have no idea.
Rob,
That is
okay.
there is no public record as far as I can tell on how much they actually accepted the bid for to build that building.
Mr. McDonald, could you
that
touch on
building,
that? I imagine that there was.
It might have been public, but nobody could find it.
Yep. Mr. Mayor, the total cost of the Parks and Rec building was $3.7 million. I believe where the contract ended up.
Very good. And was that bid out, that project for that building, or how did that?
Yes, it was all bid per city and state code. It was awarded to the contractor that's building it, and they are building it per the plans and specifications that were delineated.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Any other questions?
I watched that building go up, and that's a slow go if I've ever seen one. Yeah, on the, fees, last year. I
So
know that-
actually, fees is coming up next. It's not yet. So this is
Coming up
specific
next.
just to the budget. So do you have
Okay.
any other questions?
All right, so the focus of this city council and the mayor and everybody else is that city pool, the community swimming pool is not gonna be done next year. Is that correct?
So it's in the budget, and my understanding is, yes, it will be completed for next pool season.
This is August.
Yes, so next year, 2023.
Yeah, but this is August. So you're gonna build a pool in the middle of the winter.
And I'm not sure the expected commencement date, but I know that the expected completion is to have it up and going for next summer.
Okay, so we can hold you to that. All right,
Okay.
I'll be talking about the fees later on.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Seeing how the pool wasn't built last year and they raised the admission fees to get into the pool, unless there's another pool in this town that I don't know about.
No,
And
so I
this
don't think
year-
anybody had to pay those fees. So,
What?
very good. Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Stoddard.
I just wanted to clarify what Mr. Wolf said
Oh, yes,
relative to
thank you.
federal funds, if I may.
Yeah,
I was in raw procurement, and it was my job to deliver enough potatoes to each of the plants to supply a fuel department that took care of our customers. We did not receive any federal funds in that operation. What you're talking about is the processing end of the business where they build the buildings to process potatoes. They did get federal funds, but I did not get any federal funds in my department.
Well, J.R. Simplot Company did. Okay, thank
But
you.
raw procurement didn't.
Thank you so much. Okay, with that, I believe we can now close the public testimony portion of this hearing. Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Counselor McGee and a second from Counselor, almost said Counselor Stoddard, Counselor Doty. To close the public testimony portion of this hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. So that moves us on now to discussion. Again, this is for, under new business, action item number 1, for the consideration of the proposed budget fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2022 and ending September 30th, 2023. Any discussion from the council, and also any motions?
We're on to number 2.
Oh, number 2.
Yes, we're finalizing it in number 2.
Okay, so we're on to number 2. Thank you so much for the appropriation on that. So do I need to read this then? Okay, so this is, bill number 49, ordinance number 3443. Ordinance entitled Appropriations Ordinance for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2022, appropriating the sum of $122,191,898 to defray the expense and liabilities of the city of Caldwell, Idaho for said fiscal year, authorizing a levy of sufficient tax upon the taxable property and specifying the objects and purposes for which said appropriation is made. So any discussion or any motions for the adoption of bill number 49, ordinance number 3443?
Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Williams.
Thank you. I'm reluctantly planning on approving this budget. I want to share just a couple of thoughts on that before we do. I am particularly happy about the leadership you've brought us in raising salaries for our employees. I don't think we've gone far enough. I also am particularly happy about the new hires for our fire department and some other places where I don't think we can compromise. Our number 1 priority has to be public safety, and we can't cut corners in those regards. And so I realize a lot of this budget is going that direction. I think my heartburn in this can be summarized simply in the fact that, especially being in a recession, and it's probably irrelevant, but every indicator I'm finding, including the housing market, from just this week in the Nampa Association of Realtors released a number of homes sold decreasing 45% over last year, and the number of days on the market increasing over 66%. Every indicator we're seeing is that we're in an economic downturn. The how deep and how long are the questions no one knows the answers to. And so while I'm happy to approve it, it pains me to know that at a time of economic downturn, we're growing government and increasing property taxes, because essentially, unless I'm misunderstanding, the formula that is used to factor property taxes is a formula that includes not just your property value, but the budgets that are passed. I went to part of that meeting yesterday, Mr. Stoddard refers to, and where that budget is increasing at the county level and our budget is increasing at the city level, it has the unintended but effect of raising property taxes. And so by my yes vote, I am happily growing government and increasing property taxes for the sake of paying our employees more and doing what's right for the city. I think it's important for us to clarify that the services that we're providing are essential. I don't think there are, let me just say, while many people are probably cringing at the fact that I'm saying we're raising property taxes, I think it would be difficult for the average citizen to pick what service you provide them as their mayor they'd be willing to forego. And I'm not trying to be sarcastic or inappropriate here, but it'd be difficult for someone to come into your office and say, I'm willing to forego this service the city provides. there aren't many. At the same time, it's a difficult decision to make because of that, and fundamentally, I would say I'm against raising taxes. Fundamentally, I'm against growing government. I wish in this time of economic downturn and uncertainty, that we weren't adding all of these positions in 1 year. And I wish we were slowing that in some regards so that we could demonstrate any amount of consideration of those things. Having said that, when it comes time to push the button, it's gonna reflect green on my column.
I appreciate those comments very much. So, other discussion, any council members?
Just one comment, and I appreciate Councilor Williams' statement. But Mr. Wolf kind of brought a point that faces us citywide, and he has spoke to us a number of times about why we don't have a swimming pool. And it's been said before, the swimming pool bid started at $3 million, and then it went to $6 million, then it went to $9 million, and the last bid we heard was $12 million. Well, that is not exclusive to the pool. About everything that the city is functioning with and paying for is seeing those increases. So to make city operations work and things to happen, we're seeing those kind of increases, as is us in our personal lives, across the board. And I agree, it's difficult to swallow.
Yes, thank you so much. Any other discussion or comments from any council members? Yes, Councilor McGee?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think what Councilman Williams said, I think, is hopefully how this budget will be perceived, and that is, we made some major strides in filling what I think most of us would consider to be some gaps, both in, especially in our public safety, in police and fire. I mean, those are issues, I know, Mayor, that you and I talked about during campaign, and that we've all talked about is, and I think it's almost universal, everybody agrees that we have to do more for our police and fire, because we did fall a little bit behind, for one reason or another. And so, it's my hope that when the public understands this budget and reads about this budget, that they'll see that that is the highlight of what we're doing here. That we are taking some steps that probably needed to be taken. I'm similar to Councilman Williams. I'm going to vote in favor of this. I think in the future, and we're going to address, I know, the positions of finance director and treasurer, and there's going to be some additional changes. But I think, next year, if we can try to nail down a more accurate number in terms of what we have sitting in reserve, right? Part of that obviously is that we've had a big change in our staffing, which is a big. It's difficult to answer some of these questions when you don't have the experience that someone like Carol has had. And so I think as we look for budgeting for next year, if we could kind of keep our eye on, what that reserve amount is going to be. I know both the mayor and I served in the legislature, and that is one of the things that we did constantly discuss is what's in the rainy day fund, what's the amount in the rainy day fund, right? And so I think, what I would like to see and what I would propose and recommend is that as we do this next year, we really target what that number is, so that we really have a good, solid understanding and comfort level of, okay, that's what we have on hand in case things go wrong. So with that, Mayor, I'll be supporting the budget.
Excellent, thank you so much. Any other discussion or any motions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Doty.
Yeah, I'll sponsor bill number 49, ordinance number 3443, and move for its passage by title only.
Very good. So we have a motion for the passage of bill number 48, ordinance number 3443, the request for a move for its passage by title only.
Is it 48 or 49?
Well, on our agenda, it says 48, but in the document, it says 49.
It's 49.
I'm gonna go with,
49.
I think,
read 49, is that?
yeah, I think that's right. I know that's what's showing on, I think it's 49.
That's what I'm looking at here.
I think it's just a typo on the agenda. 49. Okay. Go 49ers. So, okay. So we have a motion, do we have a second? Very good, so we have a motion from Counselor Doty and a second from Counselor Stodic. Again, for the passage of ordinance, or bill number 49, ordinance number 3443. And the machine is open and unlocked, ready for your votes. And all votes are cast, if you can close the voting. And that motion passes unanimously, so that it approves the appropriation ordinance for fiscal year 2022-2023. So now that moves us on to action item number 3, public hearing pursuant to Idaho State Code 63-1311A to consider acceptance of the fees over 5% of that previously charged from the Caldwell Event Center, City Clerk, Library, Caldwell Golf Courses, Planning and Zoning, Parks, and Caldwell Recreation Department, including new fees and the increase to or creation of fines. Is this you again, Rochelle? You're the lucky one tonight, so.
I feel lucky. Thank you again, Mayor and Council. Rochelle Castleberry, Interim Treasurer. Here tonight to propose the public hearing for the increase in fees and new fees over 5%, or 5% increases in fees and new fees to the Caldwell Event Center, Canyon Hill Cemetery, City Clerk, Fire Department, Golf Courses, Library, Planning and Zoning, Police Department, and Parks and Recreation. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Any questions for Rochelle in regards to any of the proposed fee increases?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilor Stodic.
I just wanted to mention to the audience that in my prior term as city council, I noticed that on our fee structures, we were really, really low compared to other cities. I mean, really low. And I know at that time, I mentioned to the council and then Mayor Mancosa at that time that, you know, we can't afford to be Santa Claus forever. We have to catch up with everybody else. And when you look at these percentage increase, that's the reason why, because we've been so low for so long that, you know, we couldn't operate a lot of the departments without borrowing money to operate them. So that's the reason why these fee increases are as large as they are in some categories. Thank you.
Very good. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate those comments. Any other comments or any questions for Rochelle? Okay, very good. We do have 2 people signed up for this item in opposition. First would be Jean, if you come forward. And I'm guessing there's specific ones in here, so if you want to just detail those, and we can try to address that. So
I will.
thank you so much. If you just mind
I'm
stating
back.
your name for the record, we appreciate it. You are, yes.
Jean Kreitbring, and I'm just addressing the fees for the golf course, because that's what I am aware of and most passionate about. And we were told at a golf board meeting that the rates would be increasing by 5%, which I shared with the ladies, and they were okay with it because I explained why. But it's my understanding that Mayor Wagner wanted to raise the golf rates to compete with other courses in the valley. But thankfully, Brett talked him off the cliff. Right now, in our Ladies Association, we have members that drive from Eagle, Star, Boise, Cuna, Meridian, Nampa, Caldwell, and New Plymouth, all for our courses. They pay our membership and drive each week to play at either Fairview or Purple Sage. Several of them have boycotted their home courses this year because of the money gouging and rate increases. I'm the captain for the Southwest Travel Team, and we visit various courses in the valley. I hear complaints about needing to dissolve Travel Team because rates at various courses are getting exorbitant. Granted, Caldwell is on the lower end, but not the lowest. We are located way west, not in the heart of the Treasure Valley. Last year, there was a new rate structure put in place at the golf courses, with many of the rates raised 12.5% or more. We were assured we shouldn't see as large of a jump this year. Well, here we are again. Weekday 18-hole rates are being escalated another 12.5%, with weekend 18-hole rates being raised 13.36%. I understand that supplies have doubled or even tripled due to the supply chain issues, but that means you will have raised the rates by $6 total over a 2-year span, which is over 25%. That isn't sending a good message to your constituents nor your customers. At some point, you are going to push away customers. When I work in the pro shop periodically, I repeatedly hear about the affordable rates and fabulous conditions. Customers want to come back. I am opposed to this high of a rate increase. You need to ease into raising rates, not raising them by over 25% in a span of 2 years. Questions?
I'm just gonna make a quick comment. I wouldn't say he had to talk me off the ledge. So similar to, if you don't mind, Councilman Stoddard, kind of go off of your comments. We're just trying to make sure that it's equitable, that we are not, the taxpayers aren't funding those things. So I'd mentioned in an email, public document can be researched, to Brett to see, do we need to increase these a little more because he'd show me a chart that showed the other courses and we were still well below those. So I made a comment to him, do we need to increase these more to be closer to the other courses? And his comment back was, no, we shouldn't. This is the proposal. This is where I really believe we need to be. End of story. I trust him. He's our golf pro, so we went with that. So he didn't really have to talk me off the ledge. But I did mention it to him, just again, making sure that they were equitable. He said they were, so that's what we went with, was what he had proposed in that regard. So those are where those fees had come from, was
Well,
from
and
Brett's
I know
recommendation.
too that he told you that if we compete and raise our rates to be equal to other courses, they're not gonna drive all the way to Caldwell.
Yep, so yeah, he did
They're
mention
gonna
that.
stop at all those other courses. They're the ones that are gonna be getting the business, not us. So we do need to stay below the other ones.
Mhm.
And like I said, I mean, we have plenty of members in our ladies association that are boycotting their home courses and have joined our league because their rates are just exorbitant.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. And Brett did mention that. And I believe these are still below pretty much all the courses in the valley, if I'm not mistaken.
Not
from what
all
Brett
of
had
them, but
indicated.
yes,
The majority of that, so.
right.
Councilman McGee, I saw you grab your mic. Do you have a?
Yeah, and so, Mr. Mayor, I just want to follow up on that conversation, so I understand it correctly. These are the fee increases that we've worked with our golf pro Brett on, and that he has supported, right?
Correct,
And I
yes.
think we can all agree that Brett's done a great job managing our courses. And so far be it from me to tell Brett that these aren't the right rate increases, and so I'll be supporting this.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Stoddard.
I'm just curious, didn't Brett discuss this with the golf board, these fee increases?
We were told it was 5%, so I was shocked when I looked at it and saw that some of it was 12% or 13%. So I communicated to the ladies 5%, and they were okay with that. So I'm representing the ladies in that they're gonna be pissed when I tell them that it's not 5%, it's 12% or 13%. Because I communicated what was communicated to me at the golf board.
I was just curious why the differential, if the board wasn't communicating with Brett or with Councilman McGee.
This was in June that we were told 5%, and I don't know if he just made a blanket statement, because there are a lot of them that didn't increase at all,
I see.
and some of them are below 5%. But those two rates are significantly higher than 5%.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Doty.
And just a comment, just earlier though, when you spoke, about the golf course and the low wages though.
Mhm.
But then now we're arguing that we don't want any fee increase, and so they go hand in hand though, so eventually we wanna pay those
And I
hands
understand
at the
that,
golf
yes.
course more money, then we have to raise more money. And that usually comes from the users of that versus the total taxpayer of the whole.
And I understand we need increases because supplies and such are more. I just am concerned that we raised them over 12% last year, and we're raising them over 12% again this year. And so my point was, we should really ease into it more, because some of the ladies are on fixed incomes, and this is gonna be a huge chunk.
And I wonder, and obviously Brett's not here, and so I'm not trying to speak for him, but I do wonder if it was maybe he was thinking of like an average of 5%.
And that's why I said, you know,
Yeah.
he could have just made it, 'cause
Yep.
many of them are just 5% or less.
Yeah, like I know at Fairview, actually, there's no changes.
Right,
At Fairview.
you're right.
It's only at Purple Sage for the 18-hole weekday is a 12.5% increase. And then the
Weekend.
18-hole weekend is a 13.3% increase. All the others, either there's no change or less
Right.
than 5%
The
change. So
carts are
just those
staying the
two.
same, yes, I understand that. But I'm opposed to those two because I think we should have not gone up that much.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
the only other thing I would say, and, you know, for part of this, I don't, perhaps Councilman Stodic was here, but I think the rest of us weren't even here, Mr. Mayor. I think it's even before our time as city council members, but I think there's been an effort by Brett and previously Carol to get the golf courses back in the black.
Mhm.
Because for many years, they were operating at a deficit, and we were supplementing that. Now that it looks like we're gonna continue to operate these golf courses in the black, and so I think we really need to trust Brett and his team as to what that continues to look like. I would hate to take a step backwards and, and not have enough funds coming out of the greens fees in order to keep the golf course going. So, I mean, nobody likes to see fee increases, but, I think in order to keep our golf courses where they are, and as you've mentioned, Gene, they're bragged about all the time by people coming to visit them. We just have to take step-by-step approach to these things, so, but I appreciate your testimony and, what you've told us, and, particularly, Mayor, we know Jean's been very involved with the Women's Association, and we know you're very involved with Caldwell Golf, and so your comments are being heard for sure.
Thank you, and that was just the main thing,
Very good. Awesome.
So-
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Any other discussion in regards to, or I guess actually we do have one other person signed up on this item, Mr. Wolf. Do you want to come forward? And I'm guessing it's swimming pool fees, so.
On the fee increases, last year you increased the admission fee for a swimming pool that wasn't open. Most of the people that go to that swimming pool are people that don't have a lot of money. They can't afford to go to Wild Water or whatever that swimming place is over in Meridian. I've seen where the summer feeding project there in the park has gone, it looks like it's about 25% of what it was when the swimming pool was open, because the people can't drive someplace to feed the kids and then have something for them to do. You're talking a 13% increase on the golf course. Well, that's a 51.52 increase on that one, I see, for the pool. And that's for this year. And next year, you're gonna come back and try to raise it again, and that swimming pool isn't gonna be open next year yet. It's not gonna get built this winter. So now you've got increases, and you'll have an increase on top of an increase with nothing there for the people. It's gonna be twice as much by the time they get back to go to the swimming pool, the poor kids that are out swimming in the irrigation ditches right now. I just hope that nobody drowns while you're waiting to build that damn pool, because they didn't learn how to swim.
Yeah, I know.
I really hope that,
Yeah.
because if they do, I'm gonna recommend to them that they come back on the city and say they weren't provided the services.
So, yeah, and I
Okay, thank
would
you.
agree with that. So, I mean, we are doing everything we can to build that pool, I guarantee it. Supplies are difficult to come by, it's gonna get built. Just a real quick touch on the increases you mentioned. So from what I'm seeing, there are no proposed increases to daily admittance into the pool.
Last year there was.
There was. This year, there are none. The increases you're talking about are for rental of the pool. So if you're gonna rent the entire pool, that's what's going up. Those rentals, I believe, are gone within a week for the entire summer because they're so cheap. And so I think, again, they're just trying to bring it up, as mentioned earlier by one of the councilmen, to bring it to more of an equitable rate in that regard. So, but as far as daily admittance, there's no proposed changes to those at all. So that'd be the same rate, for those people wanting to come in and use the pool for that.
Well, I in that park every day, 365 days a year, and I watch what's happening. And I was in construction for 50 years. And I know you're not gonna have that pool ready for the next summer. So, okay,
Okay,
that's my little bit
okay.
on the fees.
Thank you so much. That is the last person who signed up, to speak on this matter. Do we have a motion to close the public testimony portion of this hearing? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, from Counselor McGee, second from Counselor Stoddick, to close the public testimony portion of this hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. So that moves us on to discussion or a motion for acceptance of the proposed fee increases. Oh, sorry? Oh, it does come back?
Yeah,
Oh.
because it has to be all the fees, so now it's gonna go into this one here.
Okay, so that's gonna come,
Yeah, that was public hearing.
so we go to this one. Okay, so that I guess is gonna come back September first then?
Yeah.
Okay, so we get to do this, hear this again September first, so. Before we do move on to the next item, if everybody is amenable for a 5-minute break?
Definitely.
Okay, very good. So we'll recess for 5 minutes, be back, 7:51. Yeah.
Saying it's on there, setting the date for this is the amended budget. This comes back, this is just the 5%, and then it comes back and
he's just being
resolution
sure.
5%
Oh,
plus
all the fees, okay.
But also, if we're straight on the golf course, these people on a fixed income, and golf is your priority? I mean, if I'm on a fixed income, I think I'll leave. Yeah, you're not paying golf course employees enough, but don't raise the fees. Mm-hmm. You stick it out and watch, you'll get out. Yeah, yeah. All right. Have fun yet?
Okay, so our recess has adjourned and we are back. So we are now to action item number 4. Pursuant to Idaho State Code 20-1002, consider acceptance of the budget amendment for fiscal year 2021-2022 and set the public hearing date for Thursday, September 1st, 2022 at 6 p.m. Again, this is only setting the date for the next city council meeting, and this is more of a housekeeping item, if I'm not mistaken, just balancing a budget every year. So
Mayor?
do we have a motion for that? Yes.
Mayor, I move that budget hearing be set for Thursday, September 1st at 6 o'clock.
Very good. We have a motion from Counselor McGee and a second from Counselor Doty, to again, set the budget amendment hearing for fiscal year 2021-2022 for Thursday, September 1st, 2022 at 6 p.m. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So that motion passes. That moves us on to action item, oh.
I'm just kidding.
Did you want to open it back up? So I thought I was doing pretty good here. So, so that moves us to action item number 5.
Okay,
This is
lay
a
out the Red Bull.
Quasi judicial, case number ZON 22-3, a request by Antonio Conti for a rezone of parcel R 35372, approximately 0.4 acres from M1 light industrial to C3 service commercial for the purpose of developing a drive-through coffee shop. And this is at the corner of 21st Avenue and Commercial Way.
Yep.
And also a proposal for comprehensive plan designation from commercial, 24 comprehensive plan designation of commercial and service. So with that, Alex, the time is yours.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Alex Jones, Associate Planner, 61 Cleveland Boulevard. This is a pretty simple case. It is just a rezone from N1 light industrial to C3 service commercial. This is a very small lot at 0.38 acres on the corner of I believe it was Chicago and North 21st. The reason for this is that this lot's been vacant for years and it's not quite big enough for any industrial use, so switching it down to a commercial use just makes more sense, especially in this area. It's comp planned as commercial service, so rezoning it would go with the comp plan. And I stand for questions.
Excellent. Do we have a site plan by chance, or, I know that the access was one issue coming up on that, so I don't know if you could show where the proposed access, I think the one's gonna go away on the north and just use the one on the south, is that correct?
If there wasn't one in the staff report, I might have, don't remember if I put that one in there, but yes, the only access is on the commercial way out there on the south.
Okay. And then that one on the north side, Rob, you said that one's going away?
Yes.
Correct, okay. And then also maybe the one last question I'd have is just the landscaping, ensuring, because I think it was overlooked, but making sure that landscaping does go all the way to the sidewalk and not just a 10-foot buffer around the property.
Correct. They would be required to go all the way to there,
Okay.
do all the right of way.
Excellent, okay. Any questions from council for Alex?
I had some, but you asked them.
Oh, very good, okay, there you go. Guess I'm on the ball tonight.
All right, great.
Somewhat. So thank you so much, appreciate it. So we do have, one person signed up for this item in favor, Mr., is it Conti, did I say that right? Antonio? So if you'll just state your name and address for the record, and then the time is yours for your presentation.
Good evening. My name is Antonio Conti, 7661 West Riverside in Garden City. Sorry, there we go. I'm here representing the owner of the parcel. The project consists into a rezone from industrial to commercial to match the existing zoning that we have on the east side of the parcel. The parcel is about 0.38 acres. The plan is to put a drive-through coffee shop or some sort of a drive-through food service. There is no room on the property to do any parking or any other public parking, public users. There may be some employee parking, and that's about the end of it. Access to the parcel, because the topography is going to be from commercial way. There is no way to have any other access. From the previous meeting, there were conversation that the landscaping is to extend to the sidewalk. There is no objection to do that. We do not have a new landscaping plan because the client decided to wait to see, how this goes. And we expected this to be a condition of approval, and they will deal during the design review of the project. Any questions?
Good. Any questions from council? Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Do we have that was the only person signed up on this matter before us. Okay, so Rob's pulling up the site plan right there, so, okay. So it shows the access coming and going from commercial.
That brings up a question, I guess, for Mr. Conti or whoever. Is that open canal staying, or is that gonna be covered, or what is the?
That is on a separate parcel. That does not, it's not an easement, there is its own parcel. Our property line ends at the edge of the canal.
Okay, so that will remain as is?
That will stay. I mean, we do not have any control on what happens to the canal.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
And
Councilor
just to be
Williams.
clear, is there a tenant, or is this just a developer building it and we'll be looking for a tenant?
There is no tenant yet. The developer is not gonna build until he has a tenant. And that's, one of the questions that came up, if we had any rendering of what the building is gonna look like. And we don't, because each tenant is gonna have their own special, look for the building, and there is no tenant at this point.
This is just a zoning rechange, so.
Correct.
Yep, so just a rezone to allow for the use. Okay, very good. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, appreciate it. Okay, do we have a motion to close the public testimony portion of this hearing?
So moved.
We have a motion from Counselor Allgood and a second from Counselor Stoddard to close the public testimony portion of this hearing. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. So that moves us to discussion of this matter. Any motions are always appropriate. Again, so what's before you is a rezone request from M1 Light Industrial to C3 Service Commercial.
I would go, but I lost my place, so I'm trying to get back to where I'm supposed to be.
Mr. Mayor, you don't have to, if you can, if you want. All right. I'll make a motion. It's right here, right? The Caldwell City Council accepts the comprehensive plan analysis, findings of fact, and conclusions of law listed herein, and based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law, The mayor and city council hereby order that the ZON 22-000003, a request made by Antonio, I'll let you say the last name.
Conti.
Okay, for a rezone of parcel R35372.38 acres from M1 light industrial to C3 service commercial for the purpose of developing a drive-through coffee shop on the corner of North 21st Avenue and Commercial Way, Caldwell, Idaho, subject to a development agreement approved with the conditions listed in section 10, if approved. Is that 10X? Is that what that's supposed to be? 10X if approved. Okay, or 10. Okay.
It has a motion for approval, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, do we have a motion for approval of the request, is there a second?
Second.
So we have a motion from Counselor Doty and a second from Counselor Stoddard to approve the rezone request of zone 22-3. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Counselor Allgood.
is it possible to add a caveat in there that if the intended use of the property changes significantly, they come before this council again?
I would think that we could add that as a condition. Would that be amenable to the maker of the motion
Sure.
and to the seconder of the motion? Very good. So then we do have an amended motion for approval with the condition as mentioned, as listed by Counselor Allgood. Good. And then the machine is opened for voting. And that is closed as all have cast their votes, and that motion passes unanimously. So that item is approved. That rezone request has been approved with those conditions as listed. So is there a motion to close new business item number 5? And a second?
Second.
Motion from Counselor Stoddard and second from Counselor Doty to close new business item number 5. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. So that moves us on to action item, or new business item number 6, which is an action item. This is to consider bill number 30, so this is tied to the previous case. Consider bill number 30, ordinance number 3424 for case number zone 22-3, with a request to move for its passage by title only and approve the summary for publication, and I will read that summary. Bill number 30, ordinance number 3424, an ordinance determining that certain land lays within the city limits of the city of Caldwell, County of Canyon, State of Idaho, and that said land should be rezoned to the C3 Service Commercial Zone, determining that said change in zoning is in the best interest of the city of Caldwell, Canyon County, Idaho, directing the city engineer and planning and zoning director to amend said property on the official maps of the city of Caldwell, Idaho, and repealing all ordinances, resolutions, orders, or parts thereof in conflict herewith. Do we have a sponsor of bill number 30, ordinance number 3424?
Mr. Mayor,
Counselor Allgood.
I'll sponsor bill number 30, ordinance number 3424, move for its passage and approve the summary for publication.
Very good. Do we have a second? So we have a motion from Counselor Allgood and a second from Counselor McGee, again for the adoption of bill number 30, ordinance number 3424. And the voting is open, I believe. You cast your vote. And all have cast their vote. If you close the voting, and that motion passes unanimously for the adoption of that bill and ordinance. And that ends, or concludes new business item number 6, which now moves us on to new business item number 7. This is a public hearing for a request by Mr. Art and Teresa Solis to vacate unopened public right-of-way adjacent to 2509 Lincoln Avenue. Staff, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. This is a request by Mr. Solis. Solis?
Did I say Solis?
To a request for vacation of a strip of right-of-way that exists to the north of his existing property. City staff has reviewed this. It has been passed through, it went through Traffic Commission. I don't remember the date, but it was several months ago where this went through Traffic Commission. And city staff has reviewed this and find that there is no need to maintain or keep this section of right-of-way. At this location, there's a pretty significant drop-off, and so it is not feasible or reasonable to have a road cutting through there and going down to the lower hill at some point in the future. what would happen is that section of right-of-way would be, vacated, it would revert back to the property owner. And then, Mr. Solis would then be able to continue to take access, to the northwest onto Nixon Street. This is the recommendation, and I stand for any questions.
Thank you so much. Any questions from council? Yes, Councilor Allgood.
We recently approved a subdivision next to Mr. Solis there. Are they gonna have a connection to Nixon at all? I can't remember. I know it was discussed.
So the subdivision there was Huntington Ridge West, and the developer who was gonna close on that property has decided not to close on the property, and so I don't think that development is moving forward at this point. They did have a fire access, and they had to, if you remember, they had to meander a fire access road up kind of a big S-curve that went up through, just so they could keep it from exceeding a 10% grade.
Gotcha, I remember.
And so it was kind of tricky for them to fit that in. That would be the only connection. There would not be a public road that we would run through there at those grades. And even at those grades, you can't even run a pathway because you're well exceeding your ADA slopes. So, yeah, just, I guess,
Thank you.
to give you an update on that.
Good, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you, Mr. McDonald. Senor Solis, if you please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and then the time is yours.
Solis, I live at 2509 Lincoln, and I think he said it all, my engineer.
You might be getting a bill now, I know you just said that, so.
He's moonlighting, that's what's going on. Basically, what you see there on this, there's a bunch of trees, a lot of garbage that has accumulated throughout the years. And so that was one of the reasons that I applied for that, so we could get that thing cleaned up, which would be part of we just built a new house there. So that's the reason why.
And your desire to pay taxes on it too, correct? Is he gonna withdraw his request now?
Is it 5 or 13%?
Very good, excellent, thank you so much. Any questions for Mr. Solis? Okay, awesome, thank you so much, appreciate you being here, so, and appreciate your wife putting up with you, so. Very good, okay. So, let's see, so do we have a motion to close? That's the only person signed up on this matter. Do we have a motion to close the public testimony portion of this hearing?
So moved.
And a second? Second. So I have a motion from Counselor Stoddard and a second from Counselor Doty to close the public testimony portion of this hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. So again, so this is a bill and an ordinance for the vacation of this right-of-way. So I will read this by title only. It is an ordinance reciting petition for vacation and reciting appropriate notice was given, a public hearing determining that vacation of said unopened public right-of-way in the city of Caldwell, Canyon County, Idaho, described below, shall be made, and determining that vacation of said following right-of-way are in the best public interest for the city of Caldwell, Canyon County, Idaho. Do we have a sponsor, bill number 51, ordinance number 3445?
Mr. Mayor,
Counselor Doty.
I will sponsor bill number 51, ordinance number 3445. Move for its passage by title only.
Very good. So we have a motion for sponsorship of bill number 51, ordinance number 3445 by title only. Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion from Counselor Doty and a second from Counselor Stoddard for passage of this bill and ordinance. The voting is open. If you'd like to cast your vote. All votes have been cast, so you can close the voting. And that motion passes unanimously, and that has been approved. So congratulations, sir. You're the proud new owner. Go clean it up before we get code enforcement on you. So, very good. So, yes, we do. So, well, actually, I think we just did that part.
We just did that,
Yep.
yeah.
So now we're on to action item number 9, or new business item number 9. And this is to consider bill number 52, ordinance number 3446 for the annexation of Ferncroft subdivision phase 2 into the Caldwell Municipal Irrigation District with a request to move for its passage by title only. Thanks so much, Art. You have a good night. Okay, so this says, an ordinance of the City of Caldwell, Idaho, annexing a portion of property within the corporate city limits into the Caldwell Municipal Irrigation District of the city of Caldwell, Canyon County, Idaho, and changing the boundaries thereof, directing the city engineer to alter the boundary map accordingly, declaring the intent of the city to pool water rights and apply a uniform method of allocating assessments and charges and providing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Counselor Allgood.
I'll sponsor bill number 52, ordinance number 3446, and move for its passage.
Do we have a second? Second. So I have a motion from Counselor Allgood and a second from Counselor Doty for sponsorship and passage of bill number 52, ordinance number 3446. The voting is open. All but one has cast a vote. There we go. So all voting has been taking place, so close the voting, and that motion passes unanimously. And that concludes, the new business item number 9, and moves us on to new business item number 10. Consider bill number 53 to amend chapter 3, article 15 of the Caldwell City Code pertaining to the roles and bifurcation, I should have studied that before, bifurcation, of the city treasurer and city finance director. Chapter 4, Article 9, clarifying who is responsible for maintaining the perpetual funds of the city of Caldwell. Chapter 1, Article 3, clarifying who is responsible for upholding the investment policy and maintenance of funds in the designation depositories. And Chapter 3, Article 1, clarifying which officers are required to post the bond with a request to move for its passage by title only and approve the summary for publication. Are you going to cover this, Taylor, or Mary Kay, or tag team, or?
I can, but I believe Mary Kay would.
Okay, Mary Kay, do you mind to speak to it? And I can, as you're coming up, so this came up obviously with Carol leaving. She was the finance director and the treasurer, so we looked at that. Is that something that should be separated out into two different positions? Kind of create a check and balances basically on that, and so that's where this is came about on that regards, and appreciate Rochelle's help also on this, and Mary Kay.
Yes.
So.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. The mayor pretty much said it all with Carol leaving. The mayor and Rochelle and the HR department looked at this position, and it looked like this would be the best route to take. So the Taylor, our attorney, put together the resolutions for the ordinances to allow it to happen. And that's basically what we are asking you to do. We do have some draft job descriptions if you would like to look at that, to get kind of an idea of that separation of duties. They are in draft form, so they're not finalized yet, but.
And also just kind of note, so in essence, this really is not creating, because right now we have the deputy treasurer, so the plan is to kind of move that into more of a treasurer position on that, so you still would have the finance director and the treasurer, rather than a finance director, treasurer, and a deputy treasurer, is the proposal for that.
And Mr. Mayor, would these both be appointed positions then?
And that is the proposal, and you know, we talked about that and discussed that, and where it's, because it technically does not have to, the treasurer does. State code is specific, your treasurer, your attorney, and your city clerk have to be appointed, none others do, it's up to the city. But as we thought about it and discussed it, where it obviously deals with money, which is obviously a very important matter for the city, felt that even though it's not required, that it should probably be an appointed position where the council has the opportunity to weigh in, again, where, you know, nothing more important than what we do in taking care of the taxpayer dollars. And so the thought was to make that an unappointed position for the council to have input and weigh in on the appointment of the finance director.
Okay, and Mr. Mayor, if memory serves correctly, thank you, there are other surrounding communities that do the same thing.
Yeah,
right? We were kind of the outlier when it comes to this, but most communities split this up, or they bifurcate it.
And that is very accurate. And I think it's just as cities, as we've grown, we've maybe, again, as we talked before, things that we've overlooked and haven't filled in. This is one of those, you know, and again, it just creates that where you're not having the same person, you know, submitting the bill and writing the check for the bill. So it kind of separates those two into two separate ones, kind of creates that just in-house checks and balances that you have. And we kind of talked about that too. Does the treasurer report to the finance director, but thought that it'd be appropriate for both of them to report to the mayor, Because again, if you're trying to create that separation, and now the treasurer has to report to the finance director and oversees them, is that really a check and balance? Because now they have them looking over their shoulder of what they're doing. So I thought it's appropriate for both of them to just report to the mayor as appointed positions, so.
So, Mr. Mayor, just to
Yes.
clarify, in this current proposal, though, we're not creating a new position for this year.
Correct.
That is correct.
Any questions for Mary Kay or myself or any? Okay. Very good. Let's see if I can find where we're at. So this is number 10. So with that, I will go ahead and read this ordinance and bill. It's a little longer than the others, so it might take a little longer. So this is ordinance number 3447, bill number 53, an ordinance enacted by the Caldwell City Council amending the title of Chapter 3, Article 15, Caldwell City Code, repealing and replacing Chapter 3, Article 15, Sections 315.1 through 315.11, Caldwell City Code pertaining to city treasurer, amending Caldwell City Code, Chapter 3 of the Caldwell City Code by the addition of a new Article 16, containing the official description of the appointed official position for the city finance director, amending Caldwell City Code, Chapter 4, Article 9, Section 497, pertaining to the perpetual sinking fund and cemetery fund of the city of Caldwell, amending Caldwell City Code, Chapter 1, Article 3, Section 131, pertaining to the investment policy of the city of Caldwell, amending Caldwell City Code, Chapter 1, Article 3, Section 133, pertaining to the designated depositories for funds held by the city of Caldwell, amending Caldwell City Code, Chapter 3, Article 1, Section 313, pertaining to the posting of bonds for certain officials, providing for an effective date, providing for severability, and repealing all ordinances, resolutions, orders, and parts thereof in conflict herewith. So with that, if there's any discussion or a motion for adoption of ordinance number 3447, bill number 53.
So moved.
Very good. Is there a second? So we have a motion from Councilor Stoddard and a second from Councilor Doty for adoption of ordinance number 3447, bill number 53. And voting is open. And all votes are there, so voting is closed, and that motion passes unanimously. So that moves us on to new business item number 11. Consider bill number 54, ordinance number 3448, amending chapter something, Article 1, Section 2, do we know what chapter? Chapter 2. Chapter 2, Article 1, Section 217, Caldwell City Code pertaining to the, okay, that's what this one is. Pertaining to the meeting time, this is Jeff's bill. Pertaining to the meeting time and location of the Caldwell City Council meetings, providing for an effective date of November 1st, 2022, with a request to move for its passage by title only. So just real quick, so obviously this was brought up at the last city council meeting, some concerns to provide some discussions. We put that in as an action item. If you want to discuss it more and move this on, you can, or we can vote on it tonight. We just put it in there because that was kind of the request. Again, so in reviewing that, as Thursday's working as well as we had hoped and planned, I think for some, yes, but for some, no. And so looked at, was there a date that could work better? The proposal that is before you is for Tuesday evenings. That would allow for the agendas to go out Fridays. So you would have those weekends to peruse that and to read through those. And then the effective date, the reason for November was just because obviously we've noticed hearings, planning and zoning is planned for hearings for those dates, so allows a few months for them to make that effective and to prepare for that to be effective again on that date of November 1st, 2022. So I don't know, Councilor Williams, you want to speak to it? And then
Thank you,
yeah.
and I do appreciate the consideration for those reasons you already stated. And I think for responsible government, it'll help us to be able to process all of the agenda and packet that we receive. I think the only regret, and I want to go public saying it, is that we will lose Jim and Sharon Porter in this process because Tuesdays are not good for them. And I do seriously regret that. They've been to more council meetings than probably all of us combined. I don't know. But it's a pleasure to see people that are so invested in their community that they're willing to sit through these without any kind of remuneration or recognition, and I wanna recognize them tonight for being here, on your anniversary.
Yeah, Sharon's like, why didn't you do this last month? So we wouldn't have to be here on our anniversary tonight, so. But yeah, so no, I appreciate that very much, so. And yes, and I appreciate the acknowledgement of the porters and all that they give without pay, to be here and to do this, and it's not because they think we're so cool. So even though you all are very cool, but they're just engaged in their community, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing, so appreciate that. And yes, thank you for those comments, Counselor Williams. Any other discussion or comments, Counselor McGee?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I would say almost exactly what Counselor Williams said, right? That it will be, if we were to take this action, for me personally, and I can't speak for everybody, but it does give us a little bit more time to digest this information, whether that meaning go back to Monday, which I'm not making that an official proposal, but someday earlier in the week when we can digest the information, not only for, frankly, Mayor, not only for us right now, but I think for future council members, right? I think it's important for us to set the stage for the right types of people to run for these positions and to be in these positions. And sometimes that would mean people who have full-time jobs 40 hours a week. Sometimes it wouldn't. But by making it easier for people in those situations to sit on the city council and be effective members of the city council, I like the idea of doing it on a Monday or a Tuesday. And what's happened, and I stopped by Debbie's office earlier in the week and I looked at the stack of documents that she has for these city council meetings, and then we try to digest 500 pages worth of information, in trying to balance a job as well. It does become burdensome, and I'm not here to tell my sob story as much as I am to say, look, when it comes to setting the stage for future councils, I think it's important that people with 40-hour-a-week jobs are able to do it as well. We'll always, I think, have some folks who are retired and able to spend more time on it. But if we want to balance on the city council of both retired and unretired and people who work 40 hours a week and those who don't, we need to consider moving this back a little bit.
Very good. Thank you so much. Any other discussion, comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Stoddard.
I just wanted to forewarn Councilman Williams that if he gets some calls or nasty emails from the Caldwell Veterans Memorial Hall Board for changing their schedule to accommodate mine on Thursday, now we're just kidding.
Sounds like you're gonna get thrown under the bus, Councilor Williams. So.
I will direct them towards you, so, okay. Thank you.
We'll make sure you have his personal cell number to provide that for them, so, very good. Any other discussion or comments?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'll bring it up, just because it's their anniversary. Has there been any discussion about going back to Monday? And I know we've talked about this, and I don't like to go back and revisit these things, to be honest with you, once we've decided them, but have we had, and maybe the question is directed towards Councilor Williams, is Monday an alternative, or is that a box that we've already checked and said that doesn't work as well for some people? And maybe, Mayor, I'm looking at you to refresh my memory as to why that's not a...
I know the issue that comes up with Mondays is a lot of holidays that fall on Mondays. So, I have a lot of those federal holidays, which requires moving it to a Tuesday night, which can create confusion for people. I know we've had people show up on Monday nights, like on a President's Day or whatever it is, and, where's the city council meeting? And then it also affects the Planning and Zoning Commission. Sometimes they then meet on Tuesdays, and so now you've got a double book. So you've got to always look at those days and see, now we're moving the city council, so we're moving the P&Z. So for those, those were the kind of the main issues for that, was just because you do have those difficulties with those holidays. Tuesday, really the only Tuesday holiday you're going to get is those ones like Christmas, things like that, which we're not going to meet on Christmas anyway on that. So that was kind of the reason for the Tuesday rather than looking back on the Monday, just for to keep that consistency. The people know it's always on that Tuesday. There's really no holidays. So they know that date and time. And I think the time has been great. The 6 o'clock has been really helpful, I think, in that regards and on that. So, but that was the reason for the Tuesday rather than for the Monday. So, and I think, and as much, like I said, we love the porters to death, but you're always going to have, whichever day you pick, there's going to be a conflict, whatever it is, you know, in that regard. So, but that was kind of the reason why it was for that Tuesday, was just to keep that consistency and not having to change it, you know, 3 or 4 times out of the year. So.
I offered the porters that we could start our meetings at 9 PM instead of 6, so they could get their other duties done first, but they didn't want to do that. They wouldn't show up for that either.
Yeah, so you might not get many votes on a 9 PM either, so if you went that way. Very good. So I will go ahead and read this ordinance and bill by title only. So again, this is ordinance number 3448, bill number 54, an ordinance enacted by the Caldwell City Council amending Chapter 2, Article 1, Section 217, Caldwell City Code pertaining to the meeting time and location of the Caldwell City Council, providing for an effective date, providing for severability, and repealing all ordinances, resolutions, orders, and parts thereof in conflict herewith.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Williams.
I move to sponsor bill number 54, ordinance number 3448, for its passage by title only.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion from Councilor Williams, and I believe the second was Councilor Allgood, correct? For adoption and passage of ordinance number 3448, bill number 54. Any discussion on that motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I see that voting has already begun. So it's too late to convince anybody except for myself and Chris. Mr. Mayor, my only question was simply that, Councilman Register isn't here. I don't, had anybody had an opportunity to check with her to see if, Tuesday was a clean night for her, or?
Yeah, I believe that we're good there. I know that we had talked with her, and she was aware of this, if I'm not mistaken, on that. And obviously, she was not
She didn't register any opposition against us. Correct. All right, thank you.
Can I vote now?
Very good. So, okay, so every votes are cast, so that passes unanimously. So again, that becomes effective first part of November, allow time for those changes to take place. So, you get to continue doing some reading Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for the next couple of months, but then we'll get that change to take effect. So, appreciate that. And again, appreciate you bringing that forward. You know, if those things come up, we discuss them, and then it's obviously the council's purview on which way they want to go in those directions. So appreciate you bringing that forward.
Porters have till November to rearrange their life.
There you go. Yeah, correct. So, watch their anniversary next year fall on a Tuesday. Like, oh, what now? What do we do? Okay, so that moves us on. Let's see. Actually, that was one of the last items. So, action, new business number 12 is consider acceptance of the finance report. Councilor Williams.
Let me find it, sorry, I got this button here. Got it. Mr. Mayor, I move that accounts payable in the amount of $3,118,059.51, represented by check numbers 163,885 through 164,129, and payroll for the amount of $488,534.10, represented by check numbers 37502 through 37534, and direct deposits be accepted, payments approved, and vouchers filed in the office of the city clerk.
Good. Do we have a second? So we have a motion from Councilor Williams and a second from Councilor Doty for acceptance of the finance report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. That moves us on to council reports. Councilor Stoddick. Very good. Councilor Doty.
I'd just like to say the Caldwell Night Rodeo is going well, and it seems to get better and better every year. I'm usually there every night, and I will be soon. And, so I just strongly support that, and I think it's a good cause for the city, so I just want to put that out.
Very good. Yes, I agree completely. Councilor Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, thank you, Michelle. I know you were in the hot seat, but, appreciate everything you do and what you have done. You know, other than that, I mentioned to you briefly, and I don't know what the solution is, but, on the corner of, Spruce and Montana in the city, for the last, let me say over a month. I would say for the last 2 months, but has it been 2 months? 6 months. Well, there is irrigation water flowing at a unimpeded rate, like a riser is open, over a city sidewalk, into the rain gutter and down into the stormwater system. I've contacted Pioneer, I've contacted people in the city, no one wants to be responsible for this, and I think perhaps one of the greatest griefs to me is this is environmentally a waste of irrigation water that is precious, especially to our farmers, and there doesn't seem to be anybody that is able to answer this question for me to get it resolved. Pioneer wants to make it a civil matter because frankly it is, in one sense, because the homeowner of this property is to be responsible for repairing the irrigation water system there. However, he is not taking responsibility for that. There has to be some way to enforce the ordinances that are being violated and as a city, protect not only the city property, but the waste that is going on perpetually 24/7 at, like I said, an unimpeded flow of irrigation water. So I hate to do it this way, but I wanted to go on record because nothing seems to be getting done.
I believe there's a criminal code about allowing water to flow on roadways.
On a roadway.
Yeah. And so the question is, so it's, I was gonna say, is there a certain day, but it sounds like it's
All the
all
time,
the
every
time.
day,
Mhm.
24/7. Unless the irrigation is shut off by Pioneer, which it hasn't been for 2 months.
Yeah, no, and yeah, I appreciate that very much. I know you sent me an email, so I apologize that I missed that and did not get back to you on it. But that may be something, Rob, I don't know what you're doing tomorrow, but maybe we could run out there and
Now we know what you're doing tomorrow.
take a look at it.
Whatever you were doing is not what you're doing right now.
I know exactly what I'm doing tomorrow.
Hanging out with me for an hour. So we'll go out there tomorrow and take a look and see. Like I said, there's gotta be something like, Counselor Algo was saying, whether it's impeding of a public sidewalk, even if it isn't in the street, there may be something that, one of those little hooks, maybe we can't get them because it is their private water, but if it's affecting a public sidewalk or whatever, maybe there's something out there that we can catch it on.
And forgive me for carrying on.
No.
The answer isn't to shut off the irrigation water to the people downline though.
Mhm.
And that's what has been done in years past when somebody complains. This homeowner needs to take responsibility for his property.
Yeah. No, we appreciate that very much. Like I said, and the big part is just that waste of a natural resource that's, in a drought and things like that, we all need to take responsibility for that. So appreciate you bringing that to light. So like I said, we'll go up there and take a look at that tomorrow, so. Counselor Allgood.
I attended the last meeting by Zoom, and thank you guys for that. I did not want to break into a coughing fit in the middle of council meeting. I just want to warn everybody, these mics are super hot. So when we take breaks and stuff and we have sidebar discussions or talk about golf or whatever we're talking about, everything comes across the mic. If you're at home, you can hear it. So just be very, very careful about what discussions you're having on the sidebar.
Yeah, we're all gonna go home tonight and rewatch this and see, oh, what did I say? So, no, I appreciate that.
It's
So,
just,
that's good to
like I
know.
said, sitting there at home, you could hear 3 or 4 discussions
Mhm.
occurring, and I wouldn't want us to get ourselves in that.
I'm sorry, I hope we're still friends.
Yeah, I'm kinda curious now, what's the other conversation?
Yeah. Yes, Counselor McGee.
I was gonna say, Councilman Doty, I didn't mean what I was saying. It was
It's like I thought it was
totally a joke. Very quickly, Mayor, Sue is here, and if I don't report on the golf board, she's gonna kill me. Things are going really well at our 2 golf courses, and I think both the women here tonight will tell you, and they're both involved with golf. Brett and Ken are doing a tremendous job, both as a golf pro and keeping the courses up. They're doing a great job. We're seeing increases in play. There's just a lot of positive things going on, despite the chairman of the golf board. We're managing to do a pretty good job there. And I'm joking. He does a great job as well.
So.
And so things are really going well on both golf courses. So, you get that, Sue? You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. And that's great to hear. And just kind of echoing that is, a reason for some of these increases is they're booked. I mean, they're booked solid. There's no open tee times. And so, I think you'll continue to see that even with, and again, it's just, a a lot of the fees stayed the same. It's really just that Purple Sage 18 hole on the weekday and on the weekend, which is the hottest time to be, not hottest as far as weather goes, but just the most popular time, I guess is a better way to put it, so.
And then very quickly, Mayor, as long as we're having the Porter Love Fest tonight, I wanted to let everybody know that on Saturday, August 27th, which is a week from Saturday, we'll be hosting Compassion Caldwell clinics at Elevate Academy, and that's from 9 to 3. And just in a nutshell, if you know people who can't afford dental care, can't afford medical care, can't afford to get a haircut, that's a great place to send people to get those services. And Jim and Sharon have been so instrumental in that as leaders in Love Caldwell. Love Caldwell is a group of churches in our community that just go out and do good things, and this is one of the great things that they have worked on over the years. So my number one, kudos to them for all their hard work on this, but secondly, if you do know somebody who needs those things done, this is just a really good opportunity to get some dental care, some medical care, or something like that. So Elevate Academy, August 27th from 9 to 3.
Perfect, awesome, thank you so much. And I'll just be really quick too. So I had the opportunity to meet with Tammy and with Mr. Porter and also Kelly Jenkins this week to discuss the VTO policy, the volunteer time off that we had discussed before, and wanted to get a little bit more information on that. So we are commencing those discussions, coming up with, I think, what will be a really great policy, and how do you say who can and can't, what organization. So we got some great feedback. Thought they were the perfect people. They're so involved in the community to say, this is how it should be run. This is why. So we are diving right into that and had some great feedback. Tammy's got some great start on it, and I know Jim as well as Kelly's had some great feedback. So looking at hopefully bringing that, maybe mid-September to council for review on that. But appreciate their willingness to help with that. Again, I couldn't have thought of any better group to be able to discuss that and see where we go with it. So excited to continue moving that direction with that policy. So, and that's all I had for now. So we do have an executive session. So we would need a motion for executive session pursuant to Idaho Code Section 74-206, subsection 1A, for the purpose of discussing the hiring of a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent, and subsection 1F for the purpose of discussing pending litigation or where there is a general public awareness of probable litigation.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make that motion based on your description of Idaho Code.
Perfect, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
So I have a motion from Councilor McGee and a second from Councilor Doty to go into executive session pursuant to as described. And the machine is open for voting. And all votes have been cast, and the vote is unanimous, so we are now into executive session.